closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The
People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, it's 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's yours, and of course it's theirs. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Right, so joining me in the next hour is broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also GB News commentator Nigel Nelson. But going head-to-head in the clash in a few moments' time, Adam Brooks and also Nigel Nelson as well. Stay tuned, we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget you can also download the GB News app where you can get all of the stuff here we have here on the channel for free. Right, coming up, Nana's niggle on this student, Donna Abuk Kama, who had her student visa revoked.
I'm Donna Abuk Kama, a Palestinian law student at the University of Manchester, and the Home Office decided to cancel my student visa after I spoke up at a pro-Palestine protest. I came here to the UK to receive an education, and as a resident, I thought that I would receive equal rights here in the UK in terms of my human rights to freely express myself and stand in solidarity with those who are oppressed in Gaza and beyond. But it came to me as a shocking realization that no, there is systemic discrimination here in the UK, and this country that takes pride in itself for being a beacon of human rights, for being a beacon of democracy, does not act in that manner towards ethnic minorities and towards people of color like myself.
Yeah, that's all very well. It's freedom of speech, but there are consequences for your words, my love. Also on the show, my outside guest will join me. I'll give you a clue. She was the first elected as a London-based councillor in 2006. I can't give you any more than that, because actually you'll work out who she is. But she's a Conservative councillor for the sort of London area. Right, now before we get started though, let's get your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Nana, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 3. I'm Sophia Wensler in the GB newsroom. First, to some developments on that breaking news coming to us from Iran this afternoon, where state TV are reporting the Iranian president has been involved in an accident while travelling in a helicopter. There are limited details at this stage, but one media outlet suggests the aircraft made what's being described as a hard landing. President Ibrahim Raisi was a passenger in one helicopter, which was travelling in a group of 3. Earlier, he met Azerbaijan's President Aliyev at the country's shared border to inaugurate a new dam. The Iranian foreign minister is also reported to be a passenger. The Interior Minister has told Iranian TV that rescue teams are being hampered by difficult weather conditions. In other news, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has vowed to compensate victims for the infected blood scandal with a £10 billion package. Hunt claimed it was part of fulfilling a promise he made to a constituent who died after contracting hepatitis C. The scandal has been the subject of the biggest ever public inquiry in the UK after tens of thousands of people were infected with the contaminated blood and blood products. One of the victims of infected blood, Joan Eddington, discussed the effect it's had on her.
All have different and various physical things, but it's the mental, it's the anguish of what we're going through, and that in itself is a support if you have the friends' support, but also, as mentioned, that the Red Cross are there at the hearings, and we can now go for counselling, and a lot of people I know go for counselling of just it's the uncertainty of your future. And what it's done to you, and the stability of your mind in a way.
Now, NHS staff will be told to work evenings and weekends under Labour plans to slash waiting lists. Hospitals will be asked to share staff and pool waiting lists as part of a £1.1 billion drive to provide an extra 40,000 appointments a week. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting also promised to protect whistleblowers and cut the NHS's reliance on migrant workers.
£1.1 billion paid for by clamping down on tax avoidance and also closing non-dom loopholes as well. And that will enable us to put £1.1 billion directly into the pockets of NHS staff to deliver those extra appointments at evenings and weekends, using an approach that's been tried and tested at the London hospital I can literally see out of my office window in Westminster. And therefore an approach we need to see available to patients right across the country, not just in London. And that does come with a cost, and that's why we've made this commitment as our first step on the journey to busting the Tory backlog and cutting NHS waiting lists.
A 14-year-old boy has died and a 13-year-old boy is in a critical condition after getting into difficulty in the River Tyne at Ovingham. Northumbria police were called on Saturday after concerns for the welfare of 2 teenage boys who were in the river. The younger boy was rescued by emergency services and taken to hospital, but the body of the 14-year-old was later found in the water following a search, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. An Israeli war cabinet minister has threatened to resign if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't adopt a new plan for Gaza. Benny Gantz has set an 8th of June deadline for a plan to achieve 6 strategic goals, including the end of Hamas's rule in Gaza. It comes after the Israeli military says it's recovered another body yesterday after the bodies of 3 Israeli hostages were recovered from Gaza on Friday. Israel says it believes 100 hostages are still alive there. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps told GB News he's pleased Benny Gantz has spoken out.
It is vital that for Israel, of course for Palestinians, that there is a route in which they end up with a government which are not a bunch of terrorists, which is what Hamas are, but people who can properly represent them. And Israel needs to set that out, because there could be, if you put all of those pieces into place and combine it with normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia, for example, a better future for that region, including for Israel. So, yes, I do think it's time to set that out, and we have been urging this step to take place.
And history was made in Saudi Arabia last night as Oleksandr Usyk became boxing's undisputed world heavyweight champion after defeating Tyson Fury. The Ukrainian won a split decision following the fight in Riyadh. Fury was nearly knocked out in the 9th round, but disputed the loss afterwards, seeming to suggest Usyk only won a sympathy vote because of the war in Ukraine. In response, Usyk said he was ready for a rematch. And for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, let's return to Nana.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Right, before we get stuck into the debates over the next hour, let me introduce you to my clashers. Joining me today, GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and also businessman and activist Adam Brooks. Right, let's see what else is coming up today. Labour, they announced their plans to slash waiting lists this week by saying that they'll ask the NHS staff to work evenings and weekends like the rest of us, and by creating 40,000 GP appointments. We'll ask whether their plans are realistic. Also this hour, ex-Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi, he says that his party were wrong to oust Boris. Really? Now you realise. Saying if his colleagues had realised, yes, Twitter was not the country, we'd have probably made a different decision. Exactly. Which goes to show their lack of connection with the British public. We'll ask, were the Tories right to get rid of Boris Johnson? And would you wear a pronoun badge at work? Almost half of the people in a recent survey have said that they'd be less likely to keep working for their company if it made them wear a badge displaying their pronouns. So, would you? What do you think? Would you tell your employer where to go? Send me your thoughts as ever. gbnews.com/your say. Right, so this is coming up to 8 minutes, 9 minutes even after 3 o'clock. And under Labour's plans, NHS staff will be told to work weekends and evenings in an effort to slash the waiting list. Now, neighbouring hospitals will be asked to share their staff and pool resources as part of the £1.1 billion drive to provide an extra 40,000 appointments at the weekend. Overtime rates will be offered to staff if they agree to pick up any extra shifts, but will this actually work? Well, I'm asking, are Labour plans for the NHS realistic? Well, first, though, let's speak to GB News' political correspondent, Olivia Utley. So, Olivia, let's lay out some more of those plans that the Labour Party are planning to put forward for the NHS.
Well, West Streeting wants to spend £1.1 billion on adding an extra 40,000 appointments to the NHS schedule. Now, to do that, he plans to get staff, nurses and doctors working evenings and weekends, and he plans to pool that staff over sort of 5 different hospitals. And he says that if he does that, then there'll be the same amount of appointments done over a weekend and as is done in a whole week during normal hospital time. I mean, obviously, it's a noble goal. NHS waiting lists are huge and just getting longer. It's the one of Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges, which he really can't claim to have made any progress on at all. But the question, of course, is, can Labour actually afford to do what they're saying they're going to do? West Streeting says that he will pay for it with the tax on non-doms, removing that special status for non-doms. Well, the Conservatives have already done that. That's coming in this September. So there isn't going to be a huge windfall of cash for the Labour Party from this policy if they come into government later in the year. And it's thought that actually the non-dom loophole close won't raise as much money as Labour had previously calculated, because so many non-doms will end up just leaving the country. Labour also talks about cutting down on tax evasion. Well, of course, every government would love to cut down on tax evasion. It is more difficult logistically than it might sound, although, of course, no reason to give up on it. Again, a noble goal. We will have to wait for the detail to come in on exactly how this is going to be budgeted to work out whether Labour is really, really serious about this. But West Streeting's rhetoric is certainly in the right direction.
Yes, that makes a change after the comments on Twitter. What about, this all sounds very laudable, and I'm wondering why the NHS don't work evenings and weekends. Could it be something to do with staff? Where's he going to get the staff? Has he mentioned anything about that?
Well, he's talked about getting staff who are already working to work more evenings and weekends. Now, it should be said that obviously NHS staff do work evenings and weekends. We don't have empty hospitals at the weekends, but there aren't routine operations at the weekends. And previously, doctors have pushed back against that. So it could well be that there is another pushback now. The thing is, it might actually be easier for Labour to implement some of these policies than it has been for the Conservatives over the past 14 years. The Conservatives, whenever they try to do anything along the lines of reforming the NHS, eyebrows are raised and there are murmurings that sort of started with the Jeremy Corbyn era that the Conservatives simply want to privatise the NHS. Labour is more trusted by the public on the NHS and actually is more trusted by NHS staff too. So it could be that Wes Streeting receives a friendlier reception than his Conservative predecessors have done when trying to persuade staff to work evenings and weekends. Of course, one difficulty is if you pool that weekend staff across sort of 5 different hospitals, you end up with people having to make very long journeys, particularly in rural areas where 5 hospitals could be really quite far apart. Will that be part of the scheme? Has that all been priced into the budget? It's not yet clear from the figures.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much. That's GB News' political correspondent, Olivia. Thank you very much. Interesting. Well, so that's what their plans are. The Labour Party are planning to do that. Let's welcome again to my clashers, GB News political commentator Nigel Nelson and also businessman and activist Adam Brooks. Well, I'm going to start with you, Nigel Nelson, because, yes, so with Streeting, he's talking about this. How realistic do these plans sound to you?
I think they're realistic. I think Olivia hit the nail on the head. What we need is a bit more detail about exactly how they'll be paid for. I mean, if NHS staff want to make extra money, and they can do it with extra shifts on the evenings and weekends, that's fine. You've got to get waiting lists down. They're at over 7 million at the moment, so that needs to be dealt with. The question is paying for it. So at the moment, as Olivia just said, you're talking about a crackdown on tax dodgers. How many? Where's the money coming from there? Is there any way of costing where these tax dodgers are? And of course, the Tories nicked the non-dom tax policy, which was meant to fund this whole thing, and a load of other things in the last budget. So it really it comes down to a question of how you pay for it. But as a plan, yes, it's realistic.
Do you think? Adam Brooks?
I think it's utter nonsense, I've got to say. For the last 2 years, we've been told by the Labour Party and by the unions that the NHS workers are tired, you know, they're underpaid, and that they're struggling and they need a rest. And, you know, it's not just about pay, these strikes, it's about their conditions. And now suddenly the Labour Party want them to work longer. It's just absolute pie in the sky. It's absolute nonsense.
It is voluntary, though, bear in mind. We're not actually telling them to work longer, that they can volunteer for it.
Let's also remember that the NHS waiting lists are in such a bad position because during COVID, the NHS basically became the national COVID service. And let's not forget that Labour wanted harsher, longer lockdowns and restrictions that would have made that even worse. No one would have been able to have been seen under a Labour government. So it frightens me that we've got people with that mindset suddenly coming into government, and they will be in government. And, you know, this is pie-in-the-sky PR exercises. Yes, I think they're going to throw money at the NHS. Yes, I think there's going to be a short-term bounce. But I think they will bankrupt the NHS and possibly bankrupt the country. So I don't know where this money's going to come from.
We've also got to, the credibility of Wes Streeting, let's be honest. Some of the things that he said have been somewhat extreme. I mean, this morning, Emily Carver spoke to him about the terrible tweet that he said to Suzanne Hall, basically referring to people who support her as white supremacists and far right. I mean, have a listen to this.
I mean, Wes, you're guilty of throwing mud just as much as the Conservatives are. I mean, last time we spoke, it was about that tweet. It was about that tweet to Susan Hall supporters, wasn't it, Wes? Saying that a vote for Susan Hall at the Labour mayoral elections was a vote for, you know, racists and Islamophobes and all of this. That was potentially tarnishing millions of voters in London who were just fed up of Sadiq Khan's record on some things.
No,
that's
absolutely
student union politics, isn't it, really?
Sadiq's big enough. Sadiq's big enough and ugly enough to take criticism. If people don't like him or don't like his policies, we'll disagree on that, but that's totally legit in a democracy. What Sadiq has faced, I think, is an unprecedented barrage of racism and prejudice as the Mayor of London. That's what I was calling out. And I don't think Susan Hall is racist. I don't think she's a white supremacist. I don't think she's an Islamophobe.
So, I mean, Wes Streeting seems to think that's fair game. I mean, he's literally saying that what he said was OK.
He's doubling down. Yeah. I mean, it was an awful tweet. Even people on the left that I know within the media have called him out on it. It was a terrible tweet. You know, I support Susan Hall because I believe she would do a lot better for London than Sadiq Khan. Does that make me racist? Islamophobic and whatever else he said there? No, it doesn't. But let's just remember about Wes Streeting. He's got a history of violent tweets going back 10, 15 years. The media have put them out there. For people to Google it, it's not hard. You know, some of the tweets that he's put out there were quite frankly shocking. And if I had tweeted those 10, 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't be sat here in the media. Yet Wes Streeting is probably going to be a high-level government minister within the next 6 months. It's just unbelievable that this man could be in government.
Nigel.
Well, I mean, I don't think that it was a very wise tweet by Wes Streeting either. Politicians should not get involved in things like racism, Islamophobia, throw those kind of allegations around. It always ends badly. I mean, look what happened to Lee Anderson when he did it. However, Susan Hall has got form in this area too. So, I mean, she...
Where?
On Twitter, that she liked a tweet about Enoch Powell. She put an emoji up.
But that's hardly the same as actually by your own fair hand writing those words.
I agree.
I mean, I don't think they're comparable.
There's a question of degree. I'm just saying that
just don't think they're
politicians getting on Twitter do get into a mess.
At the time, I don't think she was actually a high-level, top-level politician ready for government in that respect. They was.
No, but I mean, but Adams referred to old tweets from Wes Streeting when he wasn't either.
Yeah, but specifically this one,
I do not think he should have put that tweet out. Having put it out, he should have apologised and removed it, because we all agree Susan Hall isn't a white supremacist.
No, she's not.
On the Islamophobia, there's been an element of that, but I mean, I don't think I would call her an Islamophobe.
But I mean, you know, everyone's made comments, and it's easy to interpret these ones as Islamophobic. I mean, you saw what happened to Lee Anderson when he made a comment. Literally, he then, you know, lost the whip and is no longer in the Conservative Party, is it?
Well, that's his choice not to be in the Conservative Party.
But they took the whip away from him. So a win for racists and white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over. That's what he said.
Let's just remember, Sadiq Khan labelled anti-ULEZ supporters as far right. Now, I'm one of those as well. I'm an anti-ULEZ campaigner. So again, in Sadiq Khan's mind, I'm far right. This labelling, they throw it out there to deflect and to try and silence people like me and others by putting horrible labels on us. And it's a real cheap move from the left. I mean, do you think anti-ULEZ campaigners are far right?
No, and I don't think, again, that phrases like far right should be thrown about. I mean, far right to me is the English Defence League or Tommy Robinson.
No, far right to me is like Adolf Hitler. That's what we're
very, very extreme people, far right. And there's very few of them in this country.
So I agree with you totally that you shouldn't fling these things around. But that applies to both sides. I mean, both sides should stop actually making this kind of allegation.
But this one in particular, he's supposed to be holding high office soon. He's coming out with proposals for the health service. How on earth does he expect us to take him seriously? I can't take him seriously.
I don't take him seriously. And quite frankly, I am absolutely petrified of what this Labour government is going to do to this country in the next 5 years. This Conservative government have been a failure for many reasons, but these are on a whole new level, you know, and it's scary.
All right, well, what are your thoughts? Thank you for that. 3:20. This is GB News on TV online and on digital radio. Coming up, we'll be discussing Starmer's plans to stop the boats, where he wants to set a border security command. We'll be asking, will Starmer's border security command stop them? Next, will the Tories right to get rid of Boris Johnson?
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "Are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is?" And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So,
it does.
Again, we wish her
What's
very, very
quite
best.
telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, you know, forever. That people forever go there.
On the Quay. It sounds great. It's called On the Quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know I
It's all about priorities.
But, you know, you'd surely, I mean, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far.
Yeah,
and it absolutely would have been possible for him
3
to go.
miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time for The Clash. So, stay with me, because up next, ex-Chancellor Nazim Zahawi has said that the Tory party were wrong to oust Boris Johnson whilst calling him the most consequential leader since Thatcher. Well, who knew? Who knew? In an interview with the Sunday Times, Zahawi said that he wished colleagues had held their nerve and said many colleagues got spooked. If colleagues stepped back and just realised Twitter was not the country, we'd have probably made a very different decision. Exactly. You would have done if you'd listened to the country, but sadly you didn't, which is why you're in the mess that you're in. So were the Tories right to get rid of Boris Johnson? Well, joining me now, Nigel Nelson and Adam Brooks. Adam Brooks.
Right, I was on this channel all those months and years ago saying it's better the devil you know. Boris did many good things. He did many things that infuriated me and I wanted to punch the TV, in anger, especially during COVID. Yeah. But he was an elected official that got 80-seat majority.
Exactly.
So the electorate supported him. What the Conservative Party did was combust from within. They listened to left-wing activist journalists and Twitter, which isn't the electorate, isn't the people that supported the Conservative Party. They didn't listen, and it's their own fault, and we're in this position now. Even when they was going for Rishi Sunak, many of us on here and on Twitter were saying, what are you doing? He's unelectable. They didn't listen. They go to their coffee mornings with, their electorate, and they think that represents most of the people in this country. It doesn't. Their own echo chamber, they just got it wrong.
They didn't listen to anything. They didn't listen. They didn't listen. He got an 80-seat majority. Those are the words of the public, and we're the ones that elect. So even after they got rid of him, they then lost the confidence of the public, which they should have known would happen. Nigel Nelson.
Yeah, but it's what happened after that 80-seat majority that's important. That by the time Boris Johnson went, that it was quite clear his whole government had made a load of mistakes, was in chaos and confusion, and there was no way that you carry on running the country. So we start off with Partygate. We then have that rather bizarre Peppa Pig speech, which no one quite worked out what he was on about. Then we.
I did. I've been to Peppa Pig World. Have you been to Peppa Pig World?
I have not been to Peppa Pig World, but I wasn't sure the Prime Minister should have been there discussing that at that particular time.
That was a bad.
This was a speech to the CBI, after all.
No, I agree with you.
And on top of that, you then get his mistakes over Owen Paterson, trying to change the rules rather than allowing Owen Paterson to be suspended as the Standards Commission wanted. And then we get the catastrophe over Chris Pincher. Should have been suspended immediately. He wasn't. That's when ministers began quitting. And 50 of them quit before Boris had to resign.
But that is how stupid they were.
Yeah.
Because what happens with the Labour Party when things happen like Partygate, Beergate, and which I think was equivalent, and what happens with things like that...
It wasn't. I mean,
that's my view.
It was far worse, in my opinion.
In fact, it could have... You think it's worse?
I think it was
because
far worse.
There were clear inconsistencies, which I would call lies.
There were 50-odd fines for Beergate.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The Durham police had a different ruling anyway than the London force, so their raison d'etre was not to give people tickets or fines if they broke the rules. They actually tried to advocate against that. So they didn't do that, which is why Keir would have got away with that. In London, I think he would have been
Downing
fine.
Street, I mean, I think... Do you not think it's materially different for something like that to be happening at the absolute seat of government?
Compared to what? A cake in an office?
He was surprised with a cake.
An office outside. It's the fact it's in number 10. When you've imposed restrictions on the rest of the country, people can't go to funerals, they can't say goodbye to loved ones.
This is an emotional argument which you are using to actually hide the fact that what happened with Beergate is that these people collected in an area when they shouldn't have been all together. They claimed that it was an impromptu gathering. It wasn't, so that wasn't true.
They claimed Angela Rayner wasn't there.
Angela Rayner wasn't there.
She
was. I've met Angela Rayner. She's a force of nature. You do not notice Angela Rayner, let me tell you. And her head was in the picture as well, you could see, but they couldn't work out who it was. And also, he claimed that it was impromptu. It wasn't. We've seen the memo. He said there were only about 6 people there. It turns out there were almost 19. Come on, that's bad.
Standing up, drinking a Peroni beer.
I know.
There were no fines issued at the end of it. The police decided nothing had gone wrong. But even just accepting that, what I'm saying is, if in number 10, if you're holding parties and breaking the restrictions you've put down for the rest of the country, isn't that a problem?
Yeah, but I suspect many of them thought that it was within the rules because it was in one bubble. To be honest, the rules were totally confusing.
Oh, that's different.
But most
that's
of us were
different.
baffled.
The rules could have been wrong. I accept
exactly.
that.
So as I understood it, if you had your own bubble and you were in work with the people that you worked with, then that was OK.
And let's remember,
am I wrong?
Most of the so-called parties or gatherings in Downing Street were civil servants.
And he wasn't there.
And he wasn't there. Let's just be honest.
But do you think it would have happened if Theresa May had been Prime Minister?
It was a left-wing attack on a government, and these Conservative MPs crumbled and started listening to the left-wing press and Twitter.
Because of the anger in the country, because people have been restricted from doing things that people in Downing Street didn't think applied to them.
Well, but that's because I think there was a lack of understanding of the rules. The rules were confusing. Most of us got it wrong, and there's not one of us here that did not break those rules.
Correct.
Come on, Nigel.
I'm just thinking...
Exactly.
Let's remember, Boris Johnson... You're
trying to work out which one to mention.
You can love him or hate him, or both sometimes, you know. He is, or was, the only superstar MP that we had in this country.
But do you want a superstar being Prime Minister?
Absolutely, I do.
It's undeniable.
Okay.
And again, he made some terrible mistakes, and I was so angry with a lot. But what we've got now is far worse. And what we're now facing, which you'll be happy with, is a Labour government that I believe is going to bankrupt the country over the next 5 to 10 years. So the meddling by these Conservative MPs have caused a lot of damage to this country.
Well, and you know what? There was, at a time, something called collective ministerial responsibility, where parliamentarians within the cabinet, they stayed tight together, and they made sure that they kind of, if there was a guidance, they would all try and follow it. These days, they're all going rogue, doing their own thing, and it just does not work. It doesn't work, and that is a problem.
Well, I mean, it broke down there, and that's why they all resigned, because they said they couldn't carry on carrying out that collective responsibility while Boris Johnson remained in charge.
Wow.
So it was a coup, Nigel.
It was a coup.
It was a coup.
Well, a coup is not a bad word for it, but I think that the point I'm making is Boris Johnson brought it on himself.
No, do you think so? I would suspect, just from watching everything, that the Conservative Party brought this whole collapse on themselves.
They thought that they would be safer by getting rid of him, so they were saving their own bacon, and it's blown up in their faces.
It's hugely backfired. What do you think? Come on, gbnews.com/you'll say. We love hearing your views. I'll read some of those out in just a moment's time. And just to let you know, spoiler alert, the Conservative mayoral candidate will be my outside guest. I can't tell you any more. Who do you think she is? She'll be with me in a couple of hours' time. But this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio still to come. I'm asking whether Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer's Border Security Command gets your vote. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. It's just after 3:30, and we'll start with some of the latest developments coming to us from Iran this afternoon, where the Interior Minister there has now confirmed that the Iranian president has been involved in an accident while travelling in a helicopter this afternoon. There are no details at this stage on whether the president, Ibrahim Raisi, was hurt in that crash or accident, but it is being reported that the aircraft made what's being described as a hard landing. State TV also reporting that his foreign minister and other local officials were also on board with the president. Rescue teams now on the way to the site of the accident. However, we are hearing that it appears bad weather conditions are complicating rescue efforts. You can see there, if you're watching on TV, the latest pictures that have just come to us from the scene of that incident. And we will, of course, keep across the latest for you from Iran throughout the rest of the afternoon. Meanwhile, here in the UK, the Chancellor has vowed to compensate victims for the infected blood scandal with a £10 billion package. Jeremy Hunt claimed it was part of fulfilling a promise he made to a constituent who died after contracting hepatitis C. The scandal has been the subject of the biggest ever public inquiry in the UK after tens of thousands of people were infected with contaminated blood. NHS staff will be told to work evenings and weekends under Labour's plans to slash waiting lists. Hospitals would be asked to share staff and pool waiting lists as part of a £1.1 billion drive to provide an extra 40,000 appointments each week. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streetings also promised to protect whistleblowers and to cut the NHS's reliance on migrant workers. A 14-year-old boy has died and another boy who's 13 is in a critical condition after they got into difficulty in the River Tyne in Northumberland. A huge search involving police, ambulance, fire crews and mountain rescue teams was launched on Saturday afternoon. The younger boy was rescued by emergency services and taken to hospital, but the body of the 14-year-old was later found in the water and he was pronounced dead at the scene. And history was made in Saudi Arabia last night as Oleksandr Usyk became boxing's undisputed world heavyweight champion after defeating Tyson Fury. The Ukrainian won on a split decision following the fight in Riyadh. Fury was nearly knocked out in the 9th round, but disputed the loss afterwards, seeming to suggest that his opponent only won a sympathy vote because of the war in Ukraine. In response, though, Usyk said that he was ready for a rematch. That's the latest. Another update in the next half hour. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. It's just coming up to 36 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. Don't forget you can download the show live. You can stream it live on YouTube. But now it's time for the Great British Giveaway, and that's your chance to win £20,000 in cash in time for the summer. A dream holiday could be yours. You could spend it on all of that as well. Get your garden done or perhaps maybe treat the family. But you have to hurry up because time is ticking on your chance to make this yours. Here's how.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, so good luck with that one. Next, they will debate whether Starmer's Border Security Command will stop the boats.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
He's meeting his father, the King, for just the second time since his father's cancer diagnosis. Harry's going to an Invictus Games gig at St Paul's on Wednesday, and his father is hosting a garden party at Buckingham Palace. Once they're all said and done, about 7 p.m, they are going to meet, apparently.
Yeah,
but crucially not the Princess of Wales.
Well, I think it's a wonderful story, and obviously you would. If you're visiting the country, you haven't seen your dad and he's ill with cancer, of course you would go grab a Costa. I can't wait to see the pictures of them in Costa together, just having a little catch-up.
Do you know they might embrace?
I would hope so, but...
Do you know, I think it's really important that life's too short not to have a relationship with your family. I know too many people that aren't speaking, or they've fallen out because of money or whatever, and we're only on this earth for a very short time, and what a shame not to have a relationship with your own
haven't they?
son.
I mean, it's the trust issue that is really the problem here, and straight after this they're going to be heading off to Nigeria, and they're still involved in all of these sort of like commercial and media activities. If you don't have that trust there with your family, and you're responsible for breaking that trust down, it's not really, it's sort of on you, isn't it?
It's still mendable, though, I think, and we've all got people in our family that maybe we wouldn't trust with our bank details or something like that, so they can just not. You know, Charles shouldn't be going to Harry, guess what, you can't tell anyone. He's like, that's not what they're going to talk about, are they? They're not going to tell him anything.
The King is his father, but it's different, isn't it, if it's your brother, it's your sibling, whereas a father's probably perhaps more likely to be forgiving and to be wanting to sort of reunite. Do you think maybe it's going to be harder for him to mend that relationship with William and Catherine?
I think it's really, really hard. I mean, I can't see how they can... But they need to get in a room together. They need to speak. The only way that you are going to break down barriers when it comes to relationships is by facing it and speaking about it.
You say life's too short, but some would say, well, that's a perfect reason not to tolerate any nonsense.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back if you've just tuned in. Where have you been? This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua and this is The Clash. Now, this week, Sir Keir Starmer announced a six-part pledge that he would create a border force or border security command to help stop the people smugglers sending migrants across the Channel. The so-called elite unit would be led by former intelligence, military or police chief, and he granted new powers under the Counter-Terrorism Act. But will this work? I'm asking, will Sir Keir Starmer's Border Security Command stop the boats? I thought, forgive me if I'm wrong, that we had all those things. But hey, it sounds like marketing to me, Nigel.
It's turbocharging what we've already got, basically. So the actual question, will it stop the boats? No. Nor will Rwanda, nor will any...
No.
It will not stop the boats. What it should do, if it works, is to reduce the number which are crossing. The gangs have taken even more control over the last year. So, for instance, some figures came out today whereby the average number of migrants on a boat is about 49 now. Last year it was 20. So the boats are bigger.
Yeah.
That means the smuggling gangs are operating pretty much with impunity. So the idea of smashing the gangs is a sensible way of reducing it, but the idea we're going to be able to stop it, which is why it was a ridiculous pledge by Rishi Sunak, it ain't going to stop.
OK, Adam Brooks.
I find it laughable that anyone could think that Labour are going to reduce this illegal immigration problem that we've got. There's only a few things that stop the boats, and that's if we start turning them around like Greece did. Nothing happened to Greece.
No, well, we can't do that.
Well, hold on. Why can't we? Nothing happened to Greece when they did that. Nothing happened to Australia when they did that.
Australia is different because the boats are bigger and there's 150 miles of international water.
But they're still turning the boats
we could have huge vessels that take them on and take them back to certain waters.
In which case, then we've got to get the agreement of France. So if we're following that model, would you be happy for us to take any migrants that have gone from here to Ireland and take them back here? It's the same principle.
Well, we are taking them back from Ireland.
We're taking some, but we haven't.
So why can't we send them back to France?
We can't send them back to France without agreement, and the same thing applies to the number who are in Ireland. A few have come back for special reasons, but we've actually said we're not taking migrants who go from here to Ireland. We will not take those back.
The only way we stop this,
we'll just sink them.
The only way we stop
little people drowning.
No, it wouldn't, Nigel, because they get on your boat.
The only way we stop this is by being hard and by reducing what these people get. They're illegal migrants. Don't tell me they're asylum seekers, because we've got our eyes, we've got our ears. We listen to their interviews on certain news broadcasts. They're not. They're illegal immigrants that are here for free housing. They're here because they think it's El Dorado. They think they're going to get lots of free stuff. They say it in interviews in the camps in Calais. We know why they're coming. At the end of the day, if we reduce the benefits, the free housing, the free food, the free healthcare that they get, but they get all of those things.
No, they don't get those things.
They get housed, they get fed, they get looked after.
Well, we don't let them die, absolutely.
No, but hold on.
What we give them is an allowance, and that's about £8. It's not a huge allowance, just enough to keep them.
The perception is we're weak.
Once your mortgage or rental, whatever it is paid, then £8 is actually a beginning of a profit. Some people, and I know a lot of people, live in overdraft in this country anyway, and don't actually have any money to speak of. These people have come here and are given accommodation, which is fine, are given food, are given Wi-Fi, are given money, are given transport to different things that they need to get somewhere. I mean...
And that is a fact.
It's not really a cushy life, though.
Yes, but it's maybe not to you, but to many people...
It's got a cushy life to them either.
It's better than some Brits have got, Nigel.
But in a tent, which is why they're not staying in Greece. And Greece is an EU country, and Greece provides them with a tent.
Yeah, I mean, Greece...
That's why they'd stay... That's why
obviously, too many people have gone from Greece because it's much easier to get over there from Turkey. So Greece has a problem. In a sense, that shows what a global problem migration is.
Well, they've slightly fixed it, haven't they, by first of all offering just tents, which people don't want, and also by turning the boats back.
Well, it's not fixed.
Well, they've done a lot better, though, now. Remember the 11,000 that landed on, was it Lampedusa? They all landed on a larger population than the island itself.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to cope with it the same way that Italy is. Italy have a plan to process asylum seekers in Albania rather than process them in Italy.
A bit like our Rwanda plan, where we process people
not
in
really,
Rwanda.
because we're not processing in Rwanda. We're sending them to Rwanda to stay. What is happening with Italy is that if they get through the processing system, they would come back, and if they were granted asylum, go back to Italy. So there is a huge difference.
The worry is with Labour, and a lot of people I speak to, is that they're going to do a mass amnesty with the people that are already here. So that's more homes and that's more benefits that the taxpayer is going to have to pay over their lifetime.
Can we just answer the amnesty question?
Quickly, then, because I've got to go further.
OK, very quickly. It's not an amnesty. What you will do is you will process the ones who are here, because the Illegal Migration Act means that people can't stay in this country, but they can't leave. So they're stuck here, and we have to get rid of that backlog.
Which is why we need a Rwanda or somewhere you can send them if they fail asylum.
That was the point of of the Illegal Migration Act, but we're not sending them to Rwanda.
Yeah, so Keir Starmer has a bit of a problem on his hands. Where will the people who have nowhere to go? But anyway, keep your thoughts coming. Coming up, my Nana's niggle on anti-Semitism with imported foreign conflicts, and we need to get a handle on it. Next, what would you be told? Would you be happy if your employer told you to wear a pronoun badge? Would you stay?
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of today, we've still got some warm sunshine on offer. The risk of the odd shower, but feeling cooler in the east. We've got a ridge of higher pressure extending out towards the west. That's bringing in the settled conditions through much of today with light winds as indicated by the isobars. Otherwise, plenty of late evening sunshine on offer today. Any showers across southwestern parts of Scotland and Cumbria fading away into the evening. Otherwise, we've got a return of low cloud coming in from the North Sea and pushing its way further towards the west. Clearest skies further the west you go, but low cloud, mist and fog perhaps developing across Northern Ireland. Temperatures around 10 or 11, but feeling cooler underneath the clearest skies. So quite a murky start on Monday morning, especially further east that you go. So across Scotland, northeastern coasts as well, holding a lot of low cloud, mist and fog. But further the west, bright skies to start the day. Northern Ireland, like I said, some low cloud, mist and fog should lift and break. And then low cloud really lingering across parts of the southeast. Brighter skies further the west you go and dry too. So through the rest of Monday morning, low cloud, mist and fog should start lifting, breaking and burning its way back to coastlines. Might be a little bit slower than what we've seen on today, but otherwise plenty of sunny spells on offer. The risk of some heavy showers, especially across western parts of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, feeling perhaps a little bit cooler than what we saw on the weekend, but otherwise still feeling warm in the sunshine. As we go through the rest of Monday evening, any cloud generally breaking away, still with the risk of some heavy showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, perhaps developing across the south too. Otherwise, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, turning unsettled, showers or perhaps some longer spells of rain.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget as well, you can stream the show live on YouTube. The question is, though, now in the clash, would you wear a pronoun badge at work? Well, 4 in 10 people say that they would be less likely to keep working for a company if it made them wear a badge displaying their pronouns. Now, these findings are from think tank Policy Exchange, which found that 43%, that magic number, 43% Nigerian, 43%, it's all there, isn't it, of people stated that they would be less likely to continue working for a company which asked them to wear a pronoun badge, with only 7% saying that they'd be more likely to want to work for the company. So would being told to wear a pronoun badge put you off working for your employer? Well, joining me now in the clash, Nigel Nelson and Adam Brooks. Adam Brooks, would you like to wear a pronoun badge? You're the boss,
I wouldn't wear one. Yeah, I wouldn't wear one, even if GB News asked me to wear a pronoun badge. Sorry, bosses, but I wouldn't wear one. It's woke nonsense. You know, we've spent the last few years having LGBTQ plus and a million letters rammed down our throats, and this is just another part of it. I mean, the they-them one was the one that really got me. God. You know, these are proper lunatics. I mean, it is attention-seeking of the highest order, as if I'm going to call you a they, them. Well, what does that even mean? It doesn't make sense.
Well, there's only one of me, Adam.
It's ridiculous. And, you know, anyone that... You see all these virtual signalers on Twitter. Oh, no, I've got my pronouns in my bio. I'm such a nice person. I'm just helping out the gay community or the LGBT. No, you're making yourself look idiots. And I've got gay friends, gay colleagues that think the same. It's nonsense. And, you know, I'm not playing that game.
Nigel Nelson.
I wouldn't wear a badge either. However, there would be one exception. If it was offered by a company, I mean, no company should mandate it. If badges are offered, and I think that's the right thing for companies to do, so those who want to wear badges with their pronouns on can, I wouldn't do so unless a number of people, my colleagues, came to me and said, look, we'd feel really much more comfortable if everybody did it rather than just a few of us did it who were non-binary, say.
I'd still say no. And this non-binary nonsense, you know, again, it is attention-seeking of the highest order. You're either a man or a woman, or you might be a man that thinks he's a woman or a woman that thinks he's a man. But this non-binary, this is just a trend.
Well, hang on. I was trying to show some respect.
Are you non-binary?
No, I'm not non-binary.
What is non-binary?
If I was using pronouns, I'm a he, him. But the whole thing is, non-binary does exist, and one should show respect.
What is it again?
It just simply means that you're neither.
So that's fancy land.
It's a separate gender.
Yeah, but that's okay, Nigel.
Well, whether you believe it or not is irrelevant.
But it is okay. It is true whether you believe it or not is irrelevant. But it is a fantasy, isn't it? Because there's no such thing as somebody who's neither male nor female, either one or the other, to a different degree. So you might be more female or more male.
Officially, non-binary is not recognised as a gender.
Exactly. So it's made up.
But people use it as a gender, and I think that in the workplace you would have to respect their decision.
Just because they've made it up. Well, listen, I could make up a load of things. I'm going to tell people at work now I am to be referred to as HRH, Her Royal Highness. Can I do that?
No. Or what about if I sat here and said, I am now a giraffe, and you must call me a giraffe, Nigel? Would you do that?
If you required that for me to respect you, I would be happy to call you a giraffe.
You would not call him a giraffe.
It is attention-seeking.
It's rubbish, isn't it, Nigel?
No, it's not rubbish.
If I said that to my son, who is 6 years old,
it isn't rubbish.
He would laugh in my face.
Exactly that. And let's just remember, a man, it doesn't matter what surgery a man has, what drugs a man takes, what wig he wears, what, you know, fake boobs he has put on, he can never become a woman. And this is where society has broke down. We have got people like Eddie Izzard that, you know, in the media and celeb world, and people are calling Eddie a she. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. He's a man. You're a he, Eddie. I'm sorry to tell you that. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, the Great British Debate. I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? But next, Nana's niggle on anti-Semitism. We've imported foreign conflicts and we need to get a grip. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of today, we've still got some warm sunshine on offer. The risk of the odd shower, but feeling cooler in the east. We've got a ridge of higher pressure extending out towards the west. That's bringing in the settled conditions through much of today with light winds as indicated by the isobars. Otherwise, plenty of late evening sunshine on offer today. Any showers across southwestern parts of Scotland and Cumbria fading away into the evening. Otherwise, we've got a return of low cloud coming in from the North Sea and pushing its way further towards the west. Clearer skies further the west you go, but low cloud, mist and fog perhaps developing across Northern Ireland. Temperatures around 10 or 11, but feeling cooler underneath the clearest skies. So quite a murky start on Monday morning, especially further east that you go. So across Scotland, northeastern coasts as well, holding a lot of low cloud, mist and fog. But further the west, bright skies to start the day. Northern Ireland, like I said, some low cloud, mist and fog should lift and break. And then low cloud really lingering across parts of the southeast. Brighter skies further the west you go and dry too. So through the rest of Monday morning, low cloud, mist and fog should start lifting, breaking and burning its way back to coastlines. Might be a little bit slower than what we've seen on today, but otherwise plenty of sunny spells on offer. The risk of some heavy showers, especially across western parts of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, feeling perhaps a little bit cooler than what we saw on the weekend, but otherwise still feeling warm in the sunshine. As we go through the rest of Monday evening, any cloud generally breaking away, still with the risk of some heavy showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, perhaps developing across the south too. Otherwise, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, turning unsettled, showers or perhaps some longer spells of rain.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking?
Not lying, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocked me.
This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, hello, and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Don't look so bored, Danny. My niggle on anti-Semitism, it's everywhere and we need to get a handle on it. And this individual who had their student visa revoked, having been full of joy after Hamas's October the 7th attacks, this is her trying to squirm out of it.
My words were taken out of context and they were framed as me supporting harm to innocent civilians, which is completely false and completely untrue. I think it's an outrageous claim that the Home Office is making by deeming me a national security threat. I'm a 19-year-old who has done nothing but go to school and advocate for social justice and try and be an asset to my community. So by saying that I pose a threat to public security and national security is a completely baseless claim.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Freedom of speech, but then, of course, there are consequences for those words. Now, coming up, my outside guest. Now, she is a dedicated public servant for many years. She started her journey as a councillor in Harrow. Can you guess who she is? All will be revealed at 5 o'clock. I've given it away pretty much. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon to you. It's just coming up to 2 minutes past 4. We'll start this hour with the latest news coming to us out of Iran this afternoon, where President Ibrahim Raisi has been involved in an accident while he was crossing a mountainous area in a helicopter. Details at this stage are limited, but the Iranian Interior Minister has told State TV in the last hour or so that the president's helicopter was one of a group of 3 that were returning from Azerbaijan, and he says it had come down hard. It's also being reported that the foreign minister and other local officials were on board the president's helicopter. Rescue teams are now on their way to the site of that accident, but we have been hearing in the last few minutes that bad weather conditions have been complicating their rescue efforts in northern Iran. And the latest details as well from an Iranian official speaking to Reuters, the news agency, saying that they are still hopeful, but that information coming from the crash site, they say, is very concerning. And they've also added the lives of the president and the foreign minister are, they say, at risk following that helicopter crash. We will bring you more on that as we get it. But as I say, the president of Iran has been involved in a helicopter crash. Here in the UK, the Chancellor has vowed to compensate victims for the infected blood scandal with a £10 billion package. Jeremy Hunt claimed it was part of fulfilling a promise that he made to a constituent who died after contracting hepatitis C. The scandal has been the subject of the biggest ever public inquiry in the UK after tens of thousands of people were infected with contaminated blood. One of the victims, Joan Edgington, discussed the effect that it's had on her.
All have different and various physical things, but it's the mental, the anguish of what we're going through, and that in itself is a support if you have the friends' support, but also, as mentioned, like the Red Cross are there at the hearings, and we can now go for counselling, and a lot of people I know go for counselling of just it's the uncertainty of your future and what it's done to you, and the stability of your mind in a way.
NHS staff will be told to work evenings and weekends under Labour's plans to slash waiting lists. Hospitals would be asked to share staff and to pool waiting lists as part of a £1.1 billion drive to provide an extra 40,000 appointments each week. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting also promised to protect whistleblowers and to cut the NHS's reliance on migrant workers.
£1.1 billion paid for by clamping down on tax avoidance and also closing non-dom loopholes as well. And that will enable us to put £1.1 billion directly into the pockets of NHS staff to deliver those extra appointments at evenings and weekends, using an approach that's been tried and tested at the London hospital I can literally see out of my office window in Westminster. And therefore an approach we need to see available to patients right across the country, not just in London. And that does come with a cost, and that's why we've made this commitment as our first step on the journey to busting the Tory backlog and cutting NHS waiting lists.
Wes Streeting there speaking to GB News this morning. Well, in Northumberland, a 14-year-old boy has died and a 13-year-old boy is in a critical condition after getting into difficulty in the River Tyne. Police were called yesterday afternoon after concerns for the welfare of 2 teenagers were raised by the public. They were believed to be caught in the river. The younger boy was rescued by emergency services and taken to hospital. But sadly, the body of the 14-year-old was later found in the water following an extensive search, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. In Israel, a war cabinet minister has threatened to resign if the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, doesn't adopt a new plan for Gaza. Benny Gantz has set a deadline for the 8th of June to get a plan in place that will achieve 6 strategic goals, including the end of Hamas's rule in Gaza. It comes after the Israeli military said it had recovered another body yesterday, after the bodies of 3 Israeli hostages were recovered from Gaza on Friday. Israel says it believes 100 hostages are still alive there. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps told us this morning that he is pleased that Benny Gantz has spoken out.
It is vital that for Israel, of course for Palestinians, that there is a route in which they end up with a government which are not a bunch of terrorists, which is what Hamas are, but people who can properly represent them. And Israel needs to set that out, because there could be, if you put all of those pieces into place and combine it with normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia, for example, a better future for that region, including for Israel. So, yes, I do think it's time to set that out, and we have been urging this step to take place.
And finally, some news from the sporting world. History was made in Saudi Arabia last night as Oleksandr Usyk became boxing's undisputed world heavyweight champion after defeating Tyson Fury. The Ukrainian won on a split decision following the fight in Riyadh. Fury was nearly knocked out in the 9th round, but disputed his loss afterwards, seeming to suggest that his opponent only won a sympathy vote because of the war in Ukraine. In response, Usyk said he is ready for a rematch. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. For more, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, more from Nana.
So, thank you, Sam. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 8 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. It's everywhere. Anti-Semitism. I'm shocked. If I thought racism was bad against people like me in the 70s, when this country saw an influx of people of colour, things have settled down. People have come to accept that humans come in all colours and that we are all equal. Yes, of course, you get your occasional racist, but in general, I am not afraid to show my blackness, as it were, for fear of reproach by what would appear to be normal people. We've moved on, or so I thought. So I find this open anti-Semitism extremely unsettling, especially from people who should know better. Jewish people are literally being hounded out of our cities, our schools, and in particular, our universities. The weekly pro-Palestine marches have made parts of the UK no-go areas for Jewish people and brought a whole host of unsavoury characters out of the woodwork. Many of these protesters have become a kind of open season for racism. Remember the teacher who had the racist placard of Rishi and Suella as coconuts? And take Donna Abuk Kama, a Palestinian law student.
My words were taken out of context and they were framed as me supporting harm to innocent civilians, which is completely false and completely untrue. I think it's an outrageous claim that the Home Office is making by deeming me a national security threat. I'm a 19-year-old who has done nothing but go to school and advocate for social justice and try and be an asset to my community. So by saying that I pose a threat to public security and national security is a completely baseless claim.
Yeah, so that was Donna Abuk Kama, a Palestinian law student and leader of Friends of the Palestinian Society at the University of Manchester, following her speech in the university demonstrating where she said she was full of joy and pride that Palestinian resistance had come to this point. She said that her visa was revoked on the grounds of national security, with authorities citing her as a risk to public safety. And there she was, trying to squirm out of it. She's come from somewhere where there will be little freedom of speech. Supposedly normal people carrying swastikas, calling for intifada and chanting from the river to the sea, showing support for Hitler in some places is seen as cool. Remember the projection on Big Ben? People unashamedly projecting their virtues, even in our politics. People standing for high office, for leadership positions who are meant to have a sense of themselves and embroiled in all of this. Green Party candidate Madison Weldon standing at the next general election as the candidate for Warrington North. She said that both Israel and Hamas are culpable for the October the 7th attack. Well, that's rubbish, Madison. The people culpable for October the 7th are the planners and perpetrators of it. That's Hamas, not Israel. Her comment suggests that a portion of blame for this horrendous attack should be attributed to Israel. I mean, what is wrong with these people? We've gone backwards. I blame this on fast-paced, uncontrolled, unvetted and, in many cases, illegal immigration. Ironically, I'll probably be called a racist or far-right for saying this. A very odd insult, by the way, to a person of colour. We've imported foreign conflicts and they're fighting on the streets of this country. We need to get a grip before this becomes the norm. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? Labour's new plan revealed by Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting promises to slash waiting lists by having NHS staff working evenings and weekends. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? Then at 4:50, it's World View. We'll cross live to Los Angeles with host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, to get the latest on Trump's trial in Trump Watch as this New York fraud case turns into a political circus. At 5 now, my outside guest, she is an incredible woman. She's a dedicated public servant. She has been responsible for investing millions in services for adults with learning difficulties and children in care. Can you guess who she is? I'll give you one more clue. She was the Conservative mayoral candidate. That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbnews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, Danny Kelly, we're going to start with you. We've seen a lot of Nigel already.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon to you both. It's a lovely day in the capital, very warm weather. Talking about this woman, she's been deported, is she, at some point?
Well, she's apparently, these are her words, that she's had her student visa revoked.
Good. Deport her. You can't just openly praise nearly 1,000. I think at the time there were reports of it wasn't quite 1,000, but I think 1,300 people died.
Around about that.
You can't just openly say we're full of pride, we're full of joy. It's basically grateful that so many people are being slaughtered. They're not the type of people. Freedom of speech is one thing, but it's a prescribed terror organisation. You can't be eulogising about them, in my opinion. If you're going to come over to this fabulous country, it's a great country. That's why so many people get on dinghies every year. We are one of the best countries in the world. And I'm not being jingoistic. I'm just being... It's an honest reflection what a fabulous place we all live in. If you're going to come to this fabulous country, at least tolerate our sensitivities about certain things. You know, don't go around saying, great, 1,300 Jews slaughtered, women raped, kids killed. It's not the sort of thing that we want in this country.
Do you think, I mean, obviously those weren't the exact words she used.
No, I'm paraphrasing.
But she did celebrate the occasion about a day after, in her words. But do you think, Nigel, that sometimes a lot of these people come from places where freedom of speech isn't permitted, then they think that freedom of speech means you can say absolutely out what you like?
Well, I mean, in this case, freedom of speech is limited by the law.
Exactly.
So what she denies that she broke the law, but if she did, and what the Home Office have said is that she's a danger to public safety. If that is the case, then of course her student visa should be revoked. She is saying it's simply for having an opinion, in which case it shouldn't. So it's difficult to know what the rights and wrongs there, but certainly that is the law, that you're here under a visa, but you're here a bit under sufferance. It means that if you break the laws of the land, you can be deported.
And that should be absolutely right.
But this is, if I may just say, this is typifying a problem that a lot of people perceive, that people are coming to this country who absolutely hate us. And this is the personification of this perception.
Hang on, I don't think she's talking about hating us, that she may be rather disappointed about the country now she's being thrown out of it. What she's talking about is the conflict in Gaza.
Nigel, I get that, but what I'm saying is it's typifying a perception that people in this country do not like what we stand for. Yes, you're right, she's talking about the 1,300 people who were murdered, but
she's talking about the Palestine conflict, and we've got to understand that it really stirs up strong emotions. It's a perfect storm of human suffering,
Nigel,
from the Holocaust down to what happened.
The comments she made initially that got her in trouble were made about a day after October the 7th, you see. So that is the thing. So Israel hadn't retaliated in any way, shape or form. So, we understand that people are upset by the way Israel have retaliated, that some people may want to speak out. And so, nobody wants people to die, but this is a war. Now, this action on October the 7th by Hamas has initiated a war. But the fact of the matter is, before Israel had even retaliated, she was already saying these things. So she literally has no justification to say, oh, it's because I'm worried about the people of Palestine or anything like that. There's none of that.
Well, the issue has got to be whether she poses a risk to public safety as a result of that. I don't know the exact words that she used the day after.
Full of pride, full of joy, words to that effect.
I mean, clearly, that anybody who then sanctions mass murder, which is what happened, or terrorism, which is what happened on October the 7th, is not acceptable.
Yeah, but why has she not realised that what she did was glorify terror? So by doing that, you are supporting terrorists, and we don't allow that in this country.
No, we don't. And if that then constitutes a risk to public safety, then she shouldn't be in this country.
I think it does. I mean, that's just my view.
But also the broader point. I'm just going to rewind 30 seconds. My point is that there is so much unhappiness in this country, and maybe it's a perception. Perceptions aren't always correct, but there is a perception that we are importing people who do not like us, and that's a perception. Now, this woman, you're right, she didn't say, I hate Britain, I hate all of you lot.
That's kind of my point, yeah.
No, and you're right, we both agree with that, but nevertheless, we have a student who's come over on a visa, she's been welcomed, and she is basically eulogising about a terrorist organisation, and that sort of dialogue falls in neatly with the perception that people think there's lots of people coming over here who don't like us. It's all on that side of things.
Yeah, but I mean, the perception and reality are different things. So if people are coming here who don't like this country or don't want to be here, you wonder why they're coming here in the first place. What she was talking about was purely what was going on in Israel and Palestine.
Well, no, but as you said, you said it's not about perception. Perception is about reality. Well, actually, it is about perception. We can perceive that
perception's important.
She poses a risk, and from what she is saying in terms of celebrating the fact that this has happened even before Israel have retaliated. Not that even those words would be justified, but you may have some understanding of why someone would feel upset for what's going on, but there wasn't even any of that. So the bottom line is this woman does pose a risk to us in this country.
Yeah, but you can't make a decision based on a perception, is what I'm saying.
But that's what this whole thing is. It is a perception of whether she poses a risk.
I mean, what she said on screen just a second ago didn't mention Britain at all. So we're not talking about her.
But that's not really.
But you see, a judge or somebody at the Home Office, through a perception, has decided she's a threat.
No, I mean,
and a perception.
No, I think that's true. Somebody's decided from the evidence that she poses a risk to public safety.
That's correct, but that is a subjective decision. There is no evidence. She hasn't said, I'm going to plant a bomb in a train station, has she?
We don't know exactly why they revoked
based on that interview.
They revoked her visa. If it's simply based on an interview where
that's correct.
Well, if it is simply based on that, I can't quite see how she poses a risk to public safety.
Well, that's because you didn't decide it, but someone much above us on a different pay level has decided based on that interview, which is perception.
Which was why you would need more evidence to actually.
Well, evidently not.
Well, I'm not sure that's right. I think
we'll see. She's a law student, so she's going to use everything she can in her power to stay. But I would suggest to her that whilst we do have freedom of speech, it comes with boundaries, and that will be. And she may well have crossed one, but we shall follow that story and keep you posted. It's just 19 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, World View. We'll cross live to Los Angeles to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. Then the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? I've got to pull up right now on X asking you that very question. Would you trust Labour with the NHS? Send me your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Tell me what you think. Cast your vote now.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday. Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural. So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
so,
you know,
Gareth,
speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And
you know what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, earlier on in the show, we were talking about wearing a pronoun badge. Vincent got in touch and he said, Nigel is non-binary, Nigel is non-politician. I don't think he's a politician, actually. Who's this? Oh,
many support me.
Well, I love this one because just a girl said, I identify as transparent. My pronouns are who and where. That's brilliant. I love that. Brilliant. Keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say. I'd love to hear what you think on this topic in particular. But it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? Now, Labour's new plan, revealed by Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting, promises to slash waiting lists by having NHS staff working evenings and weekends. Now, this £1.1 billion initiative aims to create an additional 40,000 appointments each week, and that will mean that hospitals would share staff and resources to maximise efficiency, offering overtime pay for those willing to take on the extra shifts. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? Well, joining me now to discuss, former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards, businessman and activist Adam Woods, health writer and commentator Roy Lilly, and also NHS GP Dr David Lloyd. I'm going to start with you, Roy Lilly. What are your thoughts on these plans?
Well, the NHS is working overtime now. I mean, part of NHS England's overspend, they're about 9 billion overspent last year. Part of that was overtime, agency and bank working. And of course, NHS staff have a contract of 37.5 hours a week. All overtime will be discretionary, so you can't make people work overtime. I mean, I'm sure some will welcome it and want to do it. Some, it will push them into a higher tax band and it's probably not worth doing it. Some will have family commitments and can't do it. So you can't, I mean, this doesn't strike me as a kind of a plan to actually fix something. It's just some opportunistic ideas to say, well, if people work a bit more, we'll get a bit more done. It doesn't strike me as being a cohesive management plan to sort out the problems that there are on the NHS. The difficulties were outlined this week in a very good paper that was presented to NHS England's board, where they talked about productivity and throughput and getting more done. And the difficulties are simply that primarily people are a lot sicker than they were. Average length of stay has gone up. It was 3 to 5, and now we're talking, you know, probably 4 to 7, 4 to 8. There's a big issue with social services. Once people are medically fit to go home, they're still frail, need to be looked after, and getting care plans for them is getting more and more difficult. So there's a huge backlog there. And finally, there's been a sort of a complete lack of investment in the NHS in the years following the world banking crisis, flatline funding. We have fewer nurses, fewer doctors, fewer beds, fewer kit, fewer everything per head of population. I mean, if I just said to you, the average number of beds per head of population across Europe is 5, and here in the UK it's 2.5. So these are the big problems that Labour needs to fix, not whether or not nurses are going to want to do overtime.
Thank you for that, Roy. Dr. David Lloyd.
Hi. Well, I think that's a small part of what Labour has pledged. I think the idea of having these neighbourhood health centres is a good idea. We used to have them back in the old days of Labour Party, where we all worked together 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we provided a fantastic service. And so I'm all for bringing that back. And I know a lot of my colleagues would like to work in that sort of way, working alongside consultants and nurses, other specialties, all providing care locally by people that patients know.
Peter Edwards, wasn't it the Labour Party, wasn't it Tony Blair who kind of broke up a lot of the NHS trusts? I mean, or created a lot of the trusts? Because I remember Tony Blair had a big involvement in that.
Gosh, that might be a question for medical historians rather than me, but the primary care trust system did change under Labour, that's absolutely right. To go back to what your previous contributors were saying, staffing, I think staffing is part of the answer, and Labour have been clear it's not the only answer, but for the reasons described, you get through the backlog. But also remember that patient outcomes are often a bit worse on a Saturday or Sunday. So apart from the backlog, there's a wider benefit in having more staff on call at the weekend. And Nana, I don't need to tell you as a journalist that many of us in different industries work at weekends.
Yeah, so it does seem like as though it's some sort of, we don't get more people working on weekends. They do anyway. That feels a bit of a sort of a curveball. I don't think that's anything new. Adam Brooks.
Look, we can't skirt around the edges here. The NHS has got record amounts of funding now. You could double that and we'd still have massive issues in the NHS. There's waste. I know of suppliers that have got different tariffs, one for normal companies, one for the NHS. The NHS overpays for everything. We've got corruption on a huge scale within the NHS. We've got middle managers that middle manage other middle managers. A meeting for a meeting is waste, complete waste. There's so many jobs that could go and we could put them on the front line, you know, hire better nurses and doctors. We have got foreign interpreters. We've got foreign health tourists. You know, we've got diversity managers. Complete nonsense within the NHS that it's just wasting money. So you can throw as much money as you want at this problem. Labour is not going to solve this until they sort the core problems out. You know, as I say, you can throw as much money as you want at the NHS and it still won't improve. But
all those diversity managers that you talk about and net zero, all those people came in under the Tory government, didn't they? So, and the question is whether we can trust Labour with the NHS. And if all the things you've cited, they did come in under the Tory government. OK, so Blair, a lot of the questions asked whether Tony Blair privatised it. He was responsible for not just bringing the private sector in to provide additional capacity, but also to use it for challenging the sort of NHS institutions. So, in some way, Tony Blair, do you think, Adam, that he did a good or bad job?
I'm really not a big fan of Tony Blair, so I'm not going to say he did a great job. I think he ruined this country in many instances. But under Gordon Brown, the funding structure that he put within the NHS, is it PPI or PP?
It was this was the PFI.
PFI contracts. Yeah. A lot of the funding that NHS trusts get are spent still on these payments.
The debts, yeah.
It's still bankrupting the NHS. So a Labour government helped themselves short-term and then they've hurt the NHS long term. And I think they could do that again. They could bring in something that makes them look good, maybe improves it short term, but it's going to bankrupt the country and bankrupt the NHS.
But could they do a worse job? I mean, at least they've not had... How many health secretaries is it in 4 years? I think it was 8 health secretaries or something. In fact, in 1 year...
The Tories have been a mess.
in 1 year had 4 health secretaries. I mean, this is in 2022. So I don't know what you think. But final word, Roy Lilly, do you think that Labour are on the right track with the NHS? And if not, what would be the one thing that you would suggest that should be done to increase capacity and get it working properly?
Well, the one thing I would do is to sort out social care. I mean, Boris Johnson stood on the steps of Downing Street and said we have an oven-ready system to sort out social care, and he went missing. We've had umpteen people, I can't remember so many of them. They've all ducked social care, and Labour are ducking social care. You have to fix social care for 2 reasons. One, about 900,000 people, frail people, who used to get support from local government, so the care packages and so on, no longer get it because the eligibility criteria has been pushed up because local government doesn't have the money to provide them. So that means we've got 900,000 refugees in our own system. Where do they end up? In A&E. That's part of the problem. The other end of that problem is once people are medically ready to go home, they can't go home without some kind of support, mainly domiciliary care. The domiciliary care market is completely knackered because they're not paying enough money for it. People don't want to work in it because they pay a minimum wage and they can go and work in a supermarket and it's a lot cheaper. So the one thing I would do is to fix the one thing that all of these politicians duck, and that's fix social care. Social care. All right, well, yes or no then, Roy Lilly, yes or no? Do you trust Labour with the NHS? Oh, yeah. Dr. I don't think they're going to do any worse than anybody else. Dr. David Lloyd, do you trust Labour? Yes or no?
Absolutely, and look at the disasters that the dentistry system's got into under this government.
Okay.
It's so easy to do that into general practice as well. So, yes, Labour is safe.
Labour is safe.
Safe handler of the NHS, and will do something about the appalling dentistry service.
Adam Brooks.
No, I think they're going to bankrupt the NHS.
And Peter Edwards.
Yes, public satisfaction was a record high under the last Labour government.
OK, well, that's their thoughts. Peter Edwards, former editor of The Labour List, Adam Brooks, businessman and activist, Roy Lilly, health writer and commentator, and Dr David Lloyd, NHS GP doctor. Thank you so much. Right, what do you think at home? gbnews.com/your say. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate. I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Nigel Nelson and Danny Kelly, still to come. My outside guest, we're talking highs, lows, lessons learnt. What comes next on the outside? Well, she's a dedicated public servant for years. She started a journey as a councillor in Harrow and was the Conservative mayoral candidate. She will be live at 5. First, though, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. The top stories from the newsroom at 4:33. The Iranian president's life is at risk following a helicopter crash while he was crossing a mountainous area in thick fog. The Iranian Interior Minister has told State TV that President Ibrahim Raisi was travelling in one of 3 helicopters, all returning from Azerbaijan, and he said it had come down hard. Rescue teams are now attempting to reach the site of the accident, but reports from an Iranian official suggest limited information coming from the crash site is very concerning. Meanwhile, in the UK, the families of those affected by the infected blood scandal are holding a vigil this evening ahead of an independent inquiry's final report due out tomorrow. The scandal has been the subject of the biggest ever public inquiry in the UK after tens of thousands of people were infected with contaminated blood. The Chancellor has vowed to compensate victims with a £10 billion package. Jeremy Hunt claimed it was part of fulfilling a promise he made to a constituent who died after contracting hepatitis C. Labour says if it wins the upcoming general election, NHS staff will have to work evenings and weekends. Under plans to slash waiting lists, hospitals would also be asked to share staff and pool their waiting lists as part of a £1.1 billion drive to provide an extra 40,000 appointments a week. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting has also promised to protect whistleblowers and to cut the NHS's reliance on migrant workers. A 14-year-old boy has died after getting into difficulty in the River Tyne in Northumberland. A huge search involving police, fire crews and mountain rescue teams was launched on Saturday afternoon. Another boy, who's 13, was rescued, but he is in a critical condition in hospital. The body of the 14-year-old was later found in the water. And in sport, the Premier League title is on the line on the final day of the season. Manchester City will be crowned champions for a 4th time in a row. That's a record if they beat West Ham. And they currently lead 2-0 with Foden scoring twice. But if they drop points, Arsenal can take the trophy with a win against Everton. That's the latest from the newsroom. Another update at 5 o'clock. Until then, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Sam. Right, it's time for our Great British Giveaway and the biggest cash prize that we've ever given away. That's £20,000 that you could spend wherever you like. It's totally tax-free, so you'll basically see every penny of it. But you have to hurry and get your entry in as time is ticking for your chance to win. Here's how this cash could be yours.
The next Great British Giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking? Not lying, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, you shocked me. This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Next up, though, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Would you trust Labour with the NHS? Cast your vote now.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Meghan's launched her new lifestyle range, starting with jams. It's called American Riviera Orchard. Apparently it's been made by from organic fruits growing in Meghan and Harry's Montecito gardens. If we can believe it. I reserve an air of scepticism. But she sent out 50 jars of this jam to influencers and celebrity friends in the hope of trying to boost some sales to her product. But it's ended up winning for King Charles because fans have gone to Highgrove website and King Charles's jam has sold out.
So hang on, why did they go?
Gone through the roof.
Why did they go to the Highgrove website?
Well, I think it's a bit of a blow against Meghan because they're saying we don't want your jam. We're going to go and get the king. So it just shows how popular the king is. This is what she's always wanted. Her dream has been to be like this Gwyneth Paltrow style lifestyle guru. She's always loved Gwyneth's website Goop. When she set up the TIG, which was her website when she was still in Suits as a working actress, that was the brand, the style of brand that she was going for, was this Gwyneth style, New York elite, very princessy. So this is her chance now by trying to cash in on her royal title because she is now a duchess, so she's using that to try and elevate her brand. And she's really now trying to carve out herself as this new Martha Stewart.
And she's coming out with a cooking show as well on Netflix. She's coming out with a cooking show. And she's, I mean, to be fair to Meghan, she has always tried to say that she's into healthy eating, organic food, cooking. But I don't see this being a success. It just will not happen for her because she's just burnt too many bridges. People just don't believe in her brand. They don't think she's authentic. So are you an actress? Are you a guru?
guru?
Yeah.
Are you a duchess? Are you a philanthropist?
Who are you, Meghan?
Who actually are you?
Yeah.
This is what we're asking.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone knows. I don't think Meghan really knows who she is.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 41 minutes after 4 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. Don't worry, I don't bite, not without a good reason. It's time now to continue with the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? Now, Labour, their new plan was revealed by the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, and promises to slash waiting lists by having NHS staff working evenings and weekends. Now, Wes criticised the NHS over reliance on migrant workers. He highlighted the need to train more UK-based healthcare professionals. What do you think? Is he right? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by GB News' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson, and also broadcaster and journalist, Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, coming to you straight away. What do you think?
I would trust Labour. I don't have an ideological issue with Labour and the NHS. History tells us how difficult it is to fund the NHS. It's littered with, well, again, going back to perception, it's littered with what some people would say were mistakes with PFI and things like that. Don't forget, PFI, the reason they introduced PFI is because the government understood that Mandarins couldn't organise things and couldn't run big, massive organisations like the NHS, but private people could. The consequences of that are that private people need to make a few quid out of it. We get all of that. But I would. I mean, it's rather straightforward. I've never really understood why the NHS isn't a proper 7-day-a-week outfit. I've never really understood why Well, it's not, because consultants are off at weekends, generally speaking. Yes, there'll be one, and yes, they'll be on call. I get all of that. But people have cardiac arrests on a Saturday morning. I've never really understood why it's not a full-time, 7-day-a-week outfit. If Labour can correct that, amend it, then yes, of course.
And that's the plan. So what Wes Streeting has got to go with, it goes a lot further than just simply paying overtime for doctors and nurses to work evenings and weekends. One of the things he would do, for instance, in answer to that, is to stop surgeons clocking off at 5 o'clock. His view is, why should they? They should keep going. They should do shift work like anybody else. The reforms of the NHS will be about turning it into a prevention service rather than a sickness service. So, for instance, 80% of serious illness is in the pre-symptomatic stage when we don't know about it. If we went for enough screening, then the chances are you could pick these things up earlier. And one of the plans that he's got is to double the number of scanners that the NHS have at the moment.
But the reason that we're in this pickle is that there are quite simply too many people in this country for the service. It's as simple as that. We're overwhelmed with people, and people, no matter where they come from, they get sick. And he says that we need to train more Indigenous, more Brits, to help out the NHS. Well, the reason that we're in this position and the reason that we rely on migrants is because we've got so many migrants who are in the system.
Well, it's
never-ending.
Well, I think that's not quite. I don't think that's quite right. The reason why we're in this mess is because it's been underfunded, and in a respect, the way it's been built up, and also I think its remit is actually impossible. You cannot literally give everybody something free at the point of need, even though it's coming out of taxes. I just don't think it's realistic. But let's see what let's welcome our Great British Voice, because the show is nothing without you and your views, your opportunity to be on the show and tell me what you think about what we're discussing. Let's go to Northamptonshire, shall we? Let's speak to Miranda Richardson.
Wow.
Not the Miranda Richardson, our Miranda Richardson, the GB News Miranda Richardson. Miranda, what do you think?
Afternoon, Nana. Look at us both pretty in pink.
I know, everyone's in it. Yeah, everyone's in it. So what do you think, Miranda? Did you trust Labour with the NHS?
I'm kind of with Danny on this one, that, you know, I don't trust them and I don't distrust them. As we all know, it doesn't matter who's in charge, the NHS is in a mess, regardless of who it is. I think it is quite right. You know, my dad's just been in hospital, you know, a couple of months for 2 different things, long time. You know, we know that once Friday rolls round, well, you'll just be in there for the weekend. Somebody will come back and see you on Monday, you know, and that recovery and that being able to get that support through, it doesn't happen at the weekends. You know, God forbid you get ill on a Friday because you won't see anybody until Monday. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. And yeah, why don't they work shifts like everybody else? You know, they're just because, you know, that's why then the wait in A&E becomes so long, because guess what? The emergency rolls in at 4 o'clock in the morning, and anybody else that's been on there waits because there's one consultant, there's one surgeon, there's one doctor. But also, you know, again, the system isn't big enough. Every day, no matter where you live in the country, there is new news about so many new houses going up, so many new fields have been bought for new houses, bought for development. Where I am in Northampton, our hospital hasn't got any bigger.
Yeah,
there are houses all around it, you know.
That's the problem. We've got a growing population, and the infrastructure is simply not catching up. Miranda, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. That's the brilliant Miranda Richardson in Northamptonshire. Yes, she's our Miranda Richardson. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, coming up to 47 minutes after 4 o'clock. On the way in the next hour, the Great British Debate. I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? But next, Worldview will go live to LA and speak to the host of the Politics People podcast with Paul Dudridge.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of today, we've still got some warm sunshine on offer. The risk of the odd shower, but feeling cooler in the east. We've got a ridge of higher pressure extending out towards the west. That's bringing in the settled conditions through much of today with light winds as indicated by the isobars. Otherwise, plenty of late evening sunshine on offer today. Any showers across southwestern parts of Scotland and Cumbria fading away into the evening. Otherwise, we've got a return of low cloud coming in from the North Sea and pushing its way further towards the west. Clearest skies further the west you go, but low cloud, mist and fog perhaps developing across Northern Ireland. Temperatures around 10 or 11, but feeling cooler underneath the clearest skies. So quite a murky start on Monday morning, especially further east that you go. So across Scotland, northeastern coasts as well, holding a lot of low cloud, mist and fog. But further the west, bright skies to start the day. Northern Ireland, like I said, some low cloud, mist and fog should lift and break, and then low cloud really lingering across parts of the southeast. Brighter skies further the west you go, and dry too. So through the rest of Monday morning, low cloud, mist and fog should start lifting, breaking and burning its way back to coastlines. Might be a little bit slower than what we've seen on today, but otherwise plenty of sunny spells on offer. The risk of some heavy showers, especially across western parts of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, feeling perhaps a little bit cooler than what we saw on the weekend, but otherwise still feeling warm in the sunshine. As we go through the rest of Monday evening, any cloud generally breaking away, still with the risk of some heavy showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, perhaps developing across the south too. Otherwise, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, turning unsettled, showers or perhaps some longer spells of rain.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. Welcome to GB News. While I was moving there, I thought, oh, we're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome again to my panel, Danny Kelly and also Nigel Nelson. And lots of you have been getting in touch at gbnews.com/your say. Let's see, what else have we got? So lots of you have been saying stuff. Pete says, no, I could never trust Labour. I would sooner, because earlier I was asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? And Pete says, no, I could never trust Labour. I would sooner eat my own vomit than support them. It's not particularly nice, is it?
OK. Bon appetit if you just took it into...
Yeah, well, you wouldn't have to go to hospital.
Yeah, exactly. Let's hope you don't need a doctor. And then, what have we got here? Oh, somebody's telling, how do I vote? They don't like you, Nigel. Some people are complaining about you. Simply, no, Labour couldn't run a tap. It's not fair on your party, is it, Nigel, do you think? And then
Labour did actually found the NHS, and it's been in better management when they've been in power than when they haven't been.
James says, we don't need any more pro-Hamas terrorists coming here from abroad masquerading as students. We have enough of our own homemade ones already. So a lot of homemade terror in this country. That's probably quite true. Graham says we do not have to justify why a visa is being revoked. This is about the student who has said that she's having a visa revoked. A visa in this country is a privilege, not a right. Isn't it? That's fair enough, isn't it? Yeah. Right, and what else have we got here? Stephen says, having been a lifelong Tory voter, given the diabolical shambles of the country and having lived through the last Labour government, I would not trust any of our current inept politicians to look after anything. They are all pathetic. On that bombshell, let's flip over to Los Angeles and have a chat with host Paul Dudridge, host of the Politics People podcast. And let's get a quick update on Trump. Now, Trump is floating the idea of a 3-term presidency. That's a good idea. Well, I would like them to have only a 2-term mayoral thing in London or anywhere. I think somebody should only be mayor twice in a row. But he wants to extend it one more term, so he wouldn't... Well, he'd have to be, if he did, for 12 years on from the age he is now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously he won the last 2 elections, but he's always floated this. He's always floated the idea of having like 3, even 4 terms, because he knows it winds up the left. It's just a bait. He was addressing the National Rifle Association yesterday and floated. I mean, this will all be regurgitated like he said he's going to be a dictator. So no, it's just him playing with the left, teasing them. But he does, on a serious note, he does feel cheated, I believe, out of 2020, and should get an asterisk and a do-over, and that would technically be another.
Paul, do you think the election was stolen from him?
Yes.
You do, yeah. And the thing is, with Trump, there's many things that he said and people have sort of laughed at it, and a lot of them have turned out to be true in time. So what about Biden, though? Because Biden says a lot of stuff as well. But finally, the mainstream media are fact-checking him.
Can you imagine journalists are fact-checking a president? I've never seen the like. Biden's been saying, amongst other things, Biden's been slurring that inflation was at 9% when he came in. And for the very first time, we're seeing people like CNN, even MSNBC, sort of pushing back on the White House narrative. Saying, well, it wasn't. It was like at 1.4%, even under COVID. It was at like very, very low, historically low in some areas, levels. But he's pushing 9% when I came in, 9% when I came in, and they're all going back and saying, no, it wasn't. Now, I think there's an underlying trend happening here in the establishment we've talked about this before. I think Biden's gone by August, and I think that the establishment is beginning to push back and slightly withdraw their support and allowing a fresh candidate to come in and replace him after August and before the election.
Well, listen, Paul, we're struggling a little bit with your audio, so we'll have to leave it there. But thank you very much. That is Paul Dudridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast, giving us an update. But listen, stay tuned, because coming up, my outside guest, she's a mystery. Who is she? Well, she led calls for the mayor to cut wasteful spending and increase police funding to make London a safe place. I'm sure you've guessed who she is. She'll be live in the studio coming up there. The Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? First, an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar.
sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of today, we've still got some warm sunshine on offer. The risk of the odd shower, but feeling cooler in the east. We've got a ridge of higher pressure extending out towards the west. That's bringing in the settled conditions through much of today with light winds as indicated by the isobars. Otherwise, plenty of late evening sunshine on offer today. Any showers across southwestern parts of Scotland and Cumbria fading away into the evening. Otherwise, we've got a return of low cloud coming in from the North Sea and pushing its way further towards the west. Clearest skies further the west you go, but low cloud, mist and fog perhaps developing across Northern Ireland. Temperatures around 10 or 11, but feeling cooler underneath the clearest skies. So quite a murky start on Monday morning, especially further east that you go. So across Scotland, northeastern coasts as well, holding a lot of low cloud, mist and fog. But further the west, bright skies to start the day. Northern Ireland, like I said, some low cloud, mist and fog should lift and break. And then low cloud really lingering across parts of the southeast. Brighter skies further the west you go and dry too. So through the rest of Monday morning, low cloud, mist and fog should start lifting, breaking and burning its way back to coastlines. Might be a little bit slower than what we've seen on today, but otherwise plenty of sunny spells on offer. The risk of some heavy showers, especially across western parts of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, feeling perhaps a little bit cooler than what we saw on the weekend, but otherwise still feeling warm in the sunshine. As we go through the rest of Monday evening, any cloud generally breaking away, still with the risk of some heavy showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, perhaps developing across the south too. Otherwise, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, turning unsettled, showers or perhaps some longer spells of rain.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's 5 o'clock. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, this week's Outside. Now, I'm joined by a dedicated public servant. We'll be discussing highs, lows and the lessons learnt about her extremely interesting career in the London Assembly. Of course, she is Susan Hall. She is doing her first interview since she lost that mayoral race, so do not go anywhere. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's 5 o'clock exactly. I'm Sam Francis. A look at the headlines this evening. Bad weather is continuing to complicate efforts to locate President Ibrahim Raisi after his helicopter crashed in the mountains of Iran. The aircraft suffered what's been described as a hard landing while returning from a visit to neighbouring Azerbaijan. It's being reported that the lives of both the President and Foreign Minister, who was also on board that helicopter, are at risk, with an Iranian official describing the latest but limited information coming from the crash site as very concerning. We're also hearing from state TV in Iran that the dispatched rescue team are due to reach the probable coordinates of the President's helicopter crash within the next half hour or so. Meanwhile, here in the UK, the families of those affected by the infected blood scandal are holding a vigil this evening ahead of an independent inquiry's final report due out tomorrow. The scandal has been the subject of the biggest ever public inquiry in the UK after tens of thousands of people were infected with contaminated blood. The Chancellor has vowed to compensate victims with a £10 billion package, with Jeremy Hunt claiming it was part of fulfilling a promise that he'd made to a constituent who died after contracting hepatitis C. Well, one of the victims, Joan Edgington, has discussed the effect it's had on her.
All have different and various physical things, but it's the mental, it's the anguish of what we're going through, and that in itself is a support if you have the friends' support, but also, as mentioned, like the Red Cross are there at the hearings, and we can now go for counselling, and a lot of people I know go for counselling of just it's the uncertainty of your future and what it's done to you, and the stability of your mind in a way.
Joan Edgington there, one of the victims of the infected blood scandal. Well, in other news, NHS staff will be told to work evenings and weekends under Labour's plans to slash waiting lists. Hospitals would be asked to share staff and to pool their waiting lists as part of a £1.1 billion drive to provide an extra 40,000 appointments each week. Shadow Health Secretary Wes Streeting has also promised to protect whistleblowers and to cut the NHS's reliance on migrant workers.
£1.1 billion paid for by clamping down on tax avoidance and also closing non-dom loopholes as well. And that will enable us to put £1.1 billion directly into the pockets of NHS staff to deliver those extra appointments at evenings and weekends, using an approach that's been tried and tested at the London hospital I can literally see out of my office window in Westminster, and therefore an approach we need to see available to patients right across the country, not just in London. And that does come with a cost, and that's why we've made this commitment as our first step on the journey to busting the Tory backlog and cutting NHS waiting lists.
In Israel, a war cabinet minister has threatened to resign if the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't adopt a new plan for Gaza. Benny Gantz has set a deadline of the 8th of June to get a plan in place that will achieve 6 strategic goals, including the end of Hamas's rule in Gaza. It comes after the Israeli military says it has recovered another body after the bodies of 3 other Israeli hostages were recovered from Gaza on Friday. Israel says it believes 100 hostages are still alive there. Defence Secretary Grant Shapps told us this morning that he is pleased that Benny Gantz has spoken out.
It is vital that for Israel, of course for Palestinians, that there is a route in which they end up with a government which are not a bunch of terrorists, which is what Hamas are, but people who can properly represent them. And Israel needs to set that out, because there could be, if you put all of those pieces into place and combine it with normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia, for example, a better future for that region, including for Israel. So, yes, I do think it's time to set that out, and we have been urging this step to take place.
And finally, in sport, Manchester City are heading for a Premier League record 4th title in a row. They're 2-1 up currently on the final day of the season against West Ham. If City win, Arsenal won't be able to finish above them, and they are currently being held 1-1 by Everton. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, though, more from Nana.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 5 minutes after 5 o'clock. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Now, coming up, my incredible guest. Every Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to talk about life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today I'm joined by a member of the London Assembly who's dedicated to improving the lives of Londoners and standing up against policies such as ULEZ, which she believes makes them worse off. Of course, you've worked out who she is. She's just come off a gruelling head-to-head battle with Labour's London Mayor Sadiq Khan. Obviously, you know who she is. All will be revealed in a matter of moments. It's her first interview after that race. Then for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? It's as the Met Police are coming under increasing pressure to take action, with the Home Office set to give them new powers. So for the Great British Debate this hour, what do you think? I'm asking, is it time to shut these marches down? After all, as Suella said, a lot of people believe they are hate marches. Get in touch at gbnews.com/your say. Right, so every Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And this week, my guest has been a dedicated public servant for years. Now, she started her journey in Harrow as a councillor since 2006. Known for her leadership, she served as the head of the Conservative group in Harrow and led the council where she made significant strides in freezing council tax and investing in vital services. She's also been on the London Assembly since 2017 and challenged London Mayor Sadiq Khan in the recent mayoral election. Of course, you've got it. You have, haven't you? It's the fabulous former Conservative London mayoral candidate, Susan Hall.
Hello. Hello, Nana.
It's so good to have you on board.
Thank
because I wanted to talk to you in particular about what it was like as you went through that mayoral campaign, because there was so much out there and it must have been so pressured. What was it like?
Well, it had lots of different moments. I mean, one of the best things was listening to Londoners, and I spent a lot of time doing that. I was with a very small group of people that were helping me, but they are such lovely people. They made it much, much easier for me. And of course, the problems that all politicians have is the abuse they get for doing the job as best as they can. So it had its moments, it had good moments, and it had more difficult moments.
As a person, though, the toll that it took on you must have been quite intense, because I thought you'd be out there a lot, but for some reason you didn't seem to be out as much as I was expecting to see. Was there a reason for that?
Do you mean on the media?
Yeah.
Yes, no, I wasn't. I was spending most of my time talking to Londoners, listening to what they were saying. And when I realised I wasn't going to win, I really felt for the people that had begged me to do what I could because of the ULEZ expansion. Nobody should impose a tax that will hit the poorest the most. And that's exactly what Sadiq Khan has done with ULEZ expansion.
But he would argue that he is creating a clean air environment for the people in both inner and outer London. I mean, that's his argument.
Well, I would urge him to go and talk to those people that simply cannot afford to replace their cars and just don't know what they're going to do. And I feel that I've let them down, and I'm very sorry, because if there's one thing he should do is to put a stop to the ULEZ expansion, but he won't.
Now, your campaign, there were controversial moments in the campaign. People talked about tweets that you'd liked and all this sort of thing. Did you find that was sort of a distracting from the actual focus of what you could bring to London?
Well, of course, and what we've got to look at is that Labour will always immediately term any of their opponents as far-right. They love to call all of us racist, Islamophobic, white supremacist, and of course on that we can look at that dreadful tweet from Wes Streeting, which he put out the day before the election. And if you don't know somebody and you're thinking about voting and you suddenly think this person has been called all these things, that's going to frighten you. You're not going to want that person. And this is exactly what Labour do all the time. And they use Hope Not Hate as an organisation. It's supposed to be a charity. And it does nothing but smear and demonise people. If anybody looked into it, it doesn't touch anything to do with Labour. It's always the Conservatives that it has a go at, or anybody that's centre or right-leaning. And I think they've been given public money. But their chairman...
We don't have evidence of that, though,
well, their chairman is somebody that is on the national executive of the Labour Party. So I hope somebody does delve into it and have a look, because the literature they were putting out against me was nothing but a disgrace.
Well, for those who don't know what Wes Streeting said in his on his Twitter, he said, "A win for Susan Hall and the Conservatives is a win for racists, white supremacists and Islamophobes the world over." Now, that is our potential health minister. Emily Carver did challenge him this morning on it, and let's have a listen to what his reasoning was and how he got out of why he said those things.
I mean, Wes, you're guilty of throwing mud just as much as the Conservatives are. I mean, last time we spoke, it was about that tweet. It was about that tweet to Susan Hall supporters, wasn't it, Wes? Saying that a vote for Susan Hall at the Labour mayoral elections was a vote for, you know, racists and Islamophobes and all of this. That was potentially tarnishing millions of voters in London who were just fed up of Sadiq Khan's record on some things.
No,
that's
absolutely
student
not.
union politics, isn't it, really?
Sadiq's big enough. No, look, Sadiq's big enough and ugly enough to take criticism. If people don't like him or don't like his policies, we'll disagree on that, but that's totally legit in a democracy. What Sadiq has faced, I think, is an unprecedented barrage of racism and prejudice as the Mayor of London. That's what I was calling out. And I don't think Susan Hall is racist. I don't think she's a white supremacist. I don't think she's an Islamophobe.
So he called it totally legit for a democracy. That's what he's saying there.
Yeah, I bet they wouldn't like it if we did it to them. No, and quite frankly, we wouldn't, because we don't think that way. We don't think of our Labour colleagues as being scum. We don't think that way. But unfortunately, they do. And it's all very well for him to say, and I'm very glad he has said that, because I'd come in contact with him and I did like him. So clearly, the day before an election to do that, it's done for a reason. It's done to frighten people into thinking, oh, my goodness, we don't want somebody or people like that.
Well, I think a lot of it probably had the reverse effect of some people thinking, well, whoa, if that's what the Labour Party think that's good, acceptable to put out there, then it isn't acceptable. I mean, I looked at that and thought, if I did that and did something like that, I'm sure I would be in trouble. And if any of the people who work here said things like that, we would be in trouble for that. That's not something that you should be able to get away with. But what effect did it have on you personally? Because I know you wrote a piece in the paper about the effect that you were afraid to go out because of it.
You've got to remember that 6.1 million people saw that tweet. And if they actually believed it, and 6.1 million is a hell of a lot of people that have seen it, if any of them believe it, and I'm out and about in London all the time, I'm on the Underground a lot, you know, it does put people in danger. And we should be far more responsible, and I'm afraid Labour are not responsible at all when they throw these accusations at Conservatives in particular, because who knows what will happen. And it's not good enough, quite frankly.
Has he apologised to you personally for that?
No, of course not. I don't see... Well, he doubled down on it, didn't he?
But even there, he said that it's totally legit in a democracy for him to say that.
Yeah, well, we can all take a view about that. I don't think it is.
Well, you know, I would urge you, Wes, if you are listening, to apologise directly to Susan, because that's not acceptable. And actually, it's an insult to the people who voted for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's calling us all white supremacists and all that kind of thing, which what happened with Lee Anderson when he talked about Sadiq Khan, he was in trouble, he lost the whip, and he's no longer representing the Conservative Party. So, Susan, what happens now? You've been through the mayoral race. You didn't win. There was a moment where we thought you might win.
Yep.
But you sadly didn't win, obviously. A lot of Londoners were disappointed by that. What happens now?
Well, I'm a Conservative through and through. I shall continue to fight for the Conservatives in the general election. I think many people need to be a bit concerned, because I think Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer are looking at London and looking at the way that Sadiq Khan is raising money in London. The ULEZ expansion has brought him in eye-watering sums of money. Clearly, pay per mile was on his agenda. There's no question about that. Thankfully, I hope my campaign has made him at least stall it. But Keir Starmer will be looking at that, because I think there's something like £28 billion unaccounted for in his pledges. So he'll be looking to how he can make more money from people in the country, basically a tax, in order to fund his pledges. And I would say, be careful, his war on the motorist will be coming next, and it will be coming for people that drive. And when you look at the pay per mile, I suspect we'll have to be looking at that. If Labour win the next election, then look out, all of you, because war on the motorists will continue.
Well, he said that he's not going to do pay per mile. He sort of reversed his decision and said he's not going to. This was before the mayoral campaign.
Sadiq Khan said during the mayoral campaign that he wasn't, having spent over £20 million, I think it was, on looking at the research into it. It was in his strategy. It's all over the place, and there are people working on it now. So, you know, he says he's not going to do something. He never said he was going to bring in the ULEZ expansion. In fact, he said he wasn't going to, and look what happened there. So I think we need to be careful, and I think the country needs to be careful, because the war on the motorists will continue, because somebody has got to fund that great big hole, £28 billion hole, and Keir Starmer's pledges.
Because I'm not seeing the development of what is needed if we are to go forward with electric cars. Because in London, I don't see much infrastructure going in. Are there plans for infrastructure within London for this, if they're trying to push us all into this direction?
There's nowhere near enough infrastructure. I know so many people that were going to buy electric and aren't now. No. And I believe the demand for electric cars is going down. That's what I read somewhere. No, we're just not ready for it.
It does seem a bit odd that they'd want to advocate for that, because that means they need places where you can park to charge the car. London is very short on space, so in order to charge a car, you need a car's length to sit in a charger, and London does not have that kind of infrastructure.
Well, that's right, and it's worse than that, because in Sadiq Khan's London plan, which is what I was going to change, it actually stops car parking spaces where you've got flats and things like that. So people in flats, how on earth did they get their cars recharged? It won't work at the moment.
And also, once everybody has a car that no longer falls within the charge of ULEZ, so if your car is completely compliant, which in time every car will be, especially with the scrappage scheme, what will be the point of those cameras? And that's...
Well, it's pay per mile.
That's where we're going
it's as obvious to all of us. But as I say, I think we're the test bed in London. I think the test bed to see how these things work, so that if Keir Starmer does come into power, that everybody can expect that throughout the country.
And finally, knife crime, a big problem in London.
Oh, shocking.
And the Metropolitan Police, it doesn't feel that anything is happening. What is happening with regard to knife crime?
Well, we all see it. most days we see it, it is shocking, which is why people said, oh, the main thrust of your campaign was the ULEZ expansion. It wasn't, because that would have been stopped on day one. The main thrust of my campaign was around policing. I am passionate about policing. We need to get more police on the streets. Therefore, they need to be based back where the community they're policing are. And that's why I was going to put in 2 more bases in each borough, so that the police can be stationed near the communities that they're serving. That would really help with stopping things like knife crime, because people get the different police officers get to know the community, and they know pretty quick where there are issues in different communities.
And finally, that speech at the end, when I thought you were quite gracious towards Sadiq Khan, you said you're going to hold him to account when he won that. You got a lot of flack for that, people saying that you were having a go at him, even though you should have been saying other things. What was your thoughts on the day? And then that handshake. There was the handshake. People were saying that you offered his hand and he ignored you. Was that what happened whilst you were there? Because that's what it looked like to me.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But you'd have to ask him that. Yes, when he was announced, I wanted to congratulate him. I was standing next to him. And the speech was, yes, I will be continuing to hold you to account, because Londoners deserve that. And that's why. And I asked him to do better, because knife crime is absolutely shocking. It's going through the roof. You know, all those mothers that know their kids are involved in gangs are frightened of them going out. Of course they are. Yeah. And we need to be dealing with it, and we're not, I'm afraid.
But you are still in the London Assembly, you are still working hard.
Holding him to account.
And are you likely to go back again and try again to be
gosh,
race?
You have to jump through so many hoops before you're selected, so it would not be my... It would not be my decision.
All right. Well, Suzanne Hall, thank you very much for giving me your first interview after that mayoral race. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is Conservative London mayoral candidate Susan Hall. She's also a councillor. Well, what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. We'd like to get all your thoughts on everything we're talking about. Coming up, though, lots still to come. The mini-debate, whether the Tories were wrong to oust Boris Johnson. Former Chancellor Nazim Zahawi seems to think so. But next, the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? So this is GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Patrick Christys tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
More than 21,000 asylum seekers have gone missing in Britain over the past 5 years. The real number, by the way, will be much, much higher. The fact is, they've legged it. They're on the run and they're out committing goodness only knows what kind of crimes. But that's not the official line. Do you want to know what the official line is?
So do we now know what's happened to the remainders who have no legal basis on which to still be in the United Kingdom?
The Home Office, through our different mechanisms of tracing people, are continuing to seek to trace them.
So when people do disengage, and I think that's a more accurate word than gone missing, when people do disengage from us, we respond to that.
They've not disengaged, Mr. Cleverly. The vast majority of them had their claims rejected and then ran off because we're not deporting them quickly and they're not going to just sit there and wait for you to come and get them in a few years' time. If they don't turn up for an interview twice, they change their phone number, they don't fill in a questionnaire twice, they move address, or they change their lawyer without informing the Home Office. That's it. Is it any wonder, though, when you've got these civil service chuckle brothers running the show behind the scenes?
Put foreign offenders aside and Albanians aside, just forget about those numbers. How many people travelling on small boats that's been refused asylum have been sent to a third country or back to their own country over the past 3 years?
I don't think we have. I think
we'll write to the committee with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
That's staggering. That's actually
staggering.
Okay, then let's do it for the last year.
I don't have a number for non-Albanian, non-FNOs.
Perhaps they might be able to help you.
Let's do last week then.
Do we have any figures about anything?
I'm Patrick Christys. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's fine, it's 24 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? After months of marches every weekend, shutting down our capital city and across the country as well, the Metropolitan Police are now coming under increasing pressure to get a grip. It's as the Home Office is set to give them new powers to take back control of our streets. What do you think? Is this an assault on freedom of speech? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? Well, joining me now, former editor of the Labour list, Peter Edwards, former London police officer and director of Law and Order Foundation, Norman Brennan, and also broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and alongside her husband, former UKIP leader Neil Hamilton. Hello, guys. Right, hello. Lovely to see you, Christine. Thank you for joining me. Listen, she's great, isn't she, Christine? She's a bastion. She's there working to make sure she's on with me. Lovely. Right, let's start with you. Norman Brennan. We've had them every single weekend. We're sick and tired of them. They've been all over the country, and in particular, they've every weekend in London. Things are shutting down. Jewish people can't go out in the streets. Is it time to sort of ban or shut down some of these pro-Palestine protests?
Absolutely. I'm sick and tired of it. The public are sick and tired of it. Victims of crime are sick and tired of it. Thousands of police officers every week are leaving their police stations and divisions to attend these protests. That they've made their point, they've said what they needed to say, and sadly, the public and the victims and the retail industry are not seeing police officers on the street. Police officers are sick and tired of being faced with angry, violent, horrible people abusing them, and they're only there doing their job. And the reason why I want to see them back on their streets, Nana, is this. Is 2.5 hours ago, I wasn't a bad-looking guy. Here, sorry, that's the eye there.
Yeah.
I went to buy some chicken at Waitrose. There's a prolific shoplifter that last week put a bottle across the head of a security guard. Today, I happened to be in the store. I nicked him. He gave me a right-hander. I was out on the deck, got up, and I've nicked him. And the point I'm making is this, is that's where the public want to see the police. Walking the streets, listening to their concerns, dealing with crime and reassuring shoplifters. It shouldn't be down to people like me, retired police officers, members of the public, actually doing the job of the police. And I'm still one of their family. So my point is, enough's enough. Stop your shouting, your demonstrating, your angerness, and allow the police to get out and do the jobs that they joined the job to do and they really want to do, rather than every week having their leave cancelled just to stand there to get abused by often tens of thousands of these angry demonstrators.
OK, I'm sorry to hear about your face, Norman. Sorry about that, but well done in what you did. Like, Peter Edwards, is it time to shut down this? I mean, look, I know freedom of speech and all, but it's within the bounds.
First of all, I'm very sorry to hear that Norman was attacked while trying to apprehend a shoplifter. Very unpleasant.
Well, that's the police were elsewhere, isn't it? Probably, that's why.
In terms of the Palestine process, peaceful process is a part of democracy. My concern is perhaps the police have been a bit slow to clamp down on anti-Semitic charting, and I'm really, really worried, as I'm sure you are, about Jews in London saying they feel parts of the capital have become no-go areas. I'm not an expert on the law, but there's a proposal to have the law changed from the campaign against anti-Semitism. But police are making very difficult, nuanced operational decisions, and I think they could have been a bit tougher from the start. For example, some of the slogans, particularly anti-Semitic slogans, are completely unacceptable. But we've got to be clear, that's not 100% of the protesters.
But nothing is 100%. I mean, if you're in association with something that is bad and vile, just because you're not one of the bad and vile people, the fact that you're associated with it means that you become one of the bad and vile people.
I think it's a bit more complex than that. I mean,
I don't think so. It's a protest, and there's some bad people on this protest.
Several thousand people have taken part in these over many, many weekends, ranging from pacifists to left-wing activists, people who aren't politically aligned, I believe some Quakers as well. We can all be anxious and horrified about anti-Semitism, but recognise that people protesting is not just one lump of people. They come from different walks of life with different views.
They might do, but if you join a protest, this is not like saying, oh, black people, we don't all think the same thing and do that. This is people who've got together on one aim, which is within a protest, and they are showing their virtue there. Let's go to Neil and Christine Hamilton. Neil and Christine, well, what do you make of this? Is it time for them to shut down? Because people will go on about freedom of speech, but we are within a democracy and it does have limits.
Yeah, well, freedom of speech is all well and good, but what we're seeing on our streets is actually now amounting, I think, to a public nuisance. And as you rightly said in your introduction, we cannot have the centre of our capital city week in and week out brought to a standstill by the agitprop organisers of these marches. I don't think Peter would like it if there was a demonstration outside his house every Saturday so that he couldn't go about his lawful business going into and out of his house. And this is just something like that writ large over the whole of our capital city. So it's got to be a question of proportion. Yes, they can have their demonstrations, but not absolutely every week and not in such numbers. The numbers themselves, I think, are intimidating, and that's why lots of Jewish people will not now go into the centre of London on a Saturday, and I think that's a disgraceful state of affairs.
Christine.
Well, I would like, I mean, of course, they should be stopped, and any right has a concomitant responsibility, and the responsibility to allow other Londoners to do their business, etc. But I want to widen this slightly and take people back to how this all began on the 7th of October, when Hamas raided that peace-loving music festival. And in particular, and I posted this on Twitter a couple of hours ago, there is a horrendous video of a young girl called Nama Levy who was grabbed by Hamas. She was raped. She had her heels slashed so that she couldn't run away. She was handcuffed, and the video shows her being bundled into a truck and driven away. She has now been a hostage for 225 days. She may be dead. That is how it all started. Why aren't these people in London shouting, free the hostages, free the hostages? Let's go back to the beginning and let's start at the beginning and free the hostages. But yes, of course, we've all had enough of these marches. It is ridiculous, and it's cocking a snook at normal, decent Londoners. Yes, some of the people on the marches are normal, decent Londoners, but by joining that march, they join the other side.
Exactly. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, please, Norman. Yeah, Norman.
Nana.
Yeah.
Nana, I have absolutely no problems with people protesting for what they want. I'm Britain's leading knife campaigner, and I see the devastation of knife day in and day out. Parents planning funerals instead of futures. I cannot go on the streets of London and break the law and abuse the police and deface the capital establishments such as churches and banks. What I have to do is do it the legal way and the right way. And what I want is these police officers to get back on the beat, get away from these demonstrations and do the job that you and I and the public expect and pay them to do. And let me tell you this, that's exactly what they want to do. So the longer they're there, they're accused of two-tier policing, not caring enough, not going in strong enough. But what the public just want is they want their police back on the streets. And if the police get back on their streets, Nana, they'll start falling back in love with the police. They'll start supporting them and being reassured. That's what the public want. These demonstrations, you've said your piece. Now get back to where you are and let the police get back to where they want to be.
Okay, so then one word answer then. Is it time then to stop these pro-Palestine protests? Neil Hamilton, yes or no?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
Christine Hamilton, yes or no?
Yes, and the police want to get back to serving all Londoners, not just these protesters.
Norman Brennan, yes or no?
Yes, 3 words. Yes, enough is enough.
Yeah, and Peter Edwards, is it time to stop these pro-Palestine?
Can't do it in a word, but I want to see tougher policing and I want to see tougher action on anti-Semitism, and I certainly don't want to see people assaulting
So is that
police
yes or
either.
no? Is it time to stop them, yes or no?
I'd rather see them policed in a stronger way.
So no is the answer?
An outright ban is not the answer.
So no is the answer, is that...
Yeah, but I'll choose to use my own words.
You just said yes. No, well, I'm asking you, yes or no. I'm asking for a decision, yes or no.
An outright ban is not the answer.
So that would be a no.
I'll choose to use my own words.
That would be a no.
I'll choose to use my own words.
So that's a no. All right, thank you very much, Peter Edwards, Norman Brennan, also the lovely Christine Hamilton, and also her husband, Neil Hamilton. Thank you for joining me. Right, so what do you think? Is it time to ban pro-Palestine protests, yes or no? It's as simple as that. Right, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, Nigel Nelson and Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. It's just after 5:30. The headlines this hour. A helicopter carrying the Iranian president and his foreign minister has crashed as it was crossing a mountainous region in the north of the country. The aircraft suffered what's been described as a hard landing while returning from a visit to neighbouring Azerbaijan. It's being reported the lives of both the president and the foreign minister are at risk. And rescue teams are now working to locate the probable location of that crash site. Here in the UK, the Chancellor has vowed to compensate victims for the infected blood scandal with a £10 billion package. The families of those affected are holding a vigil this evening. You can see there, if you're watching on TV, the scenes live in London, ahead of an independent inquiry's final report due out tomorrow on the scandal. Jeremy Hunt has claimed the funding is part of fulfilling a promise he made to a constituent who died after contracting hepatitis C. The scandal has been subject of the biggest ever public inquiry in the UK after tens of thousands of people were infected with contaminated blood. Officials in Slovakia are investigating whether an attacker who shot the country's Prime Minister acted alone. 59-year-old Robert Fico's condition is no longer life-threatening, but we understand it is still very serious after he was hit multiple times on Wednesday. A man has been charged with attempting to murder him, with officials suggesting the attack was politically motivated. Here, a 14-year-old boy has died after getting into difficulty in the River Tyne. A huge search in Northumberland involving police, fire crews and mountain rescue teams was launched on Saturday. Another boy, who's 13, was rescued, but is critically ill in hospital. The body of the 14-year-old was later found in the water. And in sport, the Premier League title is on the line tonight. On the final day of the season, Manchester City will be crowned champions for a record fourth time in a row if they beat West Ham. They're currently leading 3-1 with Foden scoring twice. But if City drop points, Arsenal can take the trophy with a win against Everton. And the score there is currently 1-1. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, it's time now for our Great British giveaway, the biggest cash prize we've ever given away here on GB News, £20,000 that you can spend however you like. It's totally tax-free, so you'll pretty much get every penny of it. But you have to hurry and get your entry in as time is ticking on your chance to win. Here's how.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right, well, next it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? Don't go anywhere.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Between 1955 and 1989, an average of 55 nuclear tests were conducted across the globe each year. More than 30,000 young British and Commonwealth servicemen served at British test locations in Australia and the Pacific Ocean. But in the years since, those who were involved say they've been ignored and lied to about their exposure to radiation. For decades, Lab Rats International has represented the millions across the world exposed to fallout from the testing programmes and the families who still suffer today from illness and deformities. Last year, the government unveiled the Nuclear Test Medal, recognising the military, civilian and overseas staff and personnel who participated in Britain's nuclear testing programme in the 1950s. But for Lab Rats founder Alan Owen, whose own father was a nuclear test veteran, the work is only just beginning. In September, they launched a legal challenge to the Ministry of Defence to provide the test veterans full medical records, which they say they've been denied access to.
We sit in this bubble as the nuclear test veteran community, fighting against the establishment. And they will say, you know, ministers will go in Parliament and say, all you've got to do is apply for your medical records and they'll give them to you. You know, it just doesn't happen. It's not a reality. They're not there to as easy, as accessible as just applying. They will fight you all the way. They will delay it.
In response, a government spokesperson said, "We are grateful to all service personnel who participated in the British nuclear testing programme, which is why we have formally recognised them with an official medal. Nuclear test veterans who believe they have suffered ill health due to service have the existing and long-standing right to apply for no-fault compensation under the War Pensions Scheme." The fight for these veterans and their families lives on, because thousands who came before never got the recognition and justice for their service.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. It's 41 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? After months of marches, they've been shutting down the capital and other cities across the country. The Metropolitan Police, in particular in London, are now coming under increasing pressure to get a grip. And it's all of this as the Home Office is set to give them new powers to take back control of our streets, which I suspect these rules will cover the rest of the country as well. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it now time to shut down these pro-Palestine protests? Well, joining me now, GB News political commentator Nigel Nelson, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. They're back. Nigel Nelson, is it time to shut these things down, for goodness sake?
And I think you only shut down a protest if there is a threat to public safety.
So this isn't a threat to public safety?
No, it's not.
Really?
They're not rioting.
Well, you're not Jewish, are you?
No, I mean, I appreciate that Jews have found it difficult to be in central London when these protests have been going on.
Well, we've seen what happens when some of them do go there.
Well, we've seen one incident.
No, I've seen a lot more than that now.
OK. The whole thing is that if somebody is behaving anti-Semitically or supporting terrorism, they should be arrested. And as far as I can see, the police are arresting them. What these things are not turning into is what you would call, well, not a riot. A riot would be a threat to the public. And they haven't actually turned into that. So this is the right to free speech.
Nigel, you're denying... And I'm going to speak generally, but these protests are denying everyday Londoners the opportunity just to go about their lives as they normally would do on a Saturday.
That applies to strikers or any protesters, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's been going on and on and on.
Well, but so's the war.
Yeah, but it's the futility of it as well. Do you honestly think that protesting every Saturday is going to change any government policy that Israel dishes out? It's the futility of it, and it's the fact that it's disrupting Londoners' lives now. I agree with you. Everyone should be allowed to protest. I think just bang them in Regent's Park. Have your protest in the park. Do what the hell you want. You're not going to disrupt thousands and thousands of people. And also, it is a hostile environment for Jews. And the pro-Palestinian people will say, hang on, we got a load of Jews with placards ourselves. You know, they're on our side. And to them, they're just useful Jews.
Yeah, well, I mean, all I can say is that people must have a right to protest.
But what about the right just to go about your daily routine?
On June the 1st, Tommy Robinson has been given permission by the Metropolitan Police to hold a protest that will start in Victoria and end in Parliament.
For one day, it's not every weekend.
Not recurring Saturdays.
Listen, what's the problem? I actually like your suggestion that if they want to carry on recurring these protests, they can go to somewhere like a park, which is not fair for the people who would like to enjoy the park, but at least they're contained and businesses can get on with things. And then I think they should be charged. There should be a fee for them to be doing that. They should maybe have wristbands or something. They should all be charged at least £5 or something to even be there.
You can't
otherwise,
charge people
I
to
think
protest.
You can. I think you can.
That's ridiculous.
No, I think you can.
This is a democracy, and people must have the right to protest.
No, you've got the right to protest, but the bottom line is...
Whoever they are.
You've got the right to protest, but you're going to have to pay for the police protection for your protest, and that's what this would be about. Because we cannot continue to stump, 20 million or whatever it is, every weekend for this thing to go on.
Yeah, but you'd then have to do that for every protest, wouldn't you?
Yeah, what's the problem?
The problem is we live in a democracy.
You're getting confused with living in a democracy and being charged for the policing that you will require.
Policing is part of that democracy.
Yes,
if there's a demonstration going on, the police have a duty then to police it at public expense.
Well, yes, at public expense, the public people who are at the protest, because they also have a job to look after people all across the country.
Every Saturday,
not just
though.
Those.
Can you tell me of another protest that is a recurring feature?
If it's recurring, you need to start paying for protection.
My point there is that the war has been going on. I mean, if the war had ended, these protests would stop.
No, I get that.
Danny, but can I just remind you that in football... Yeah?
Yeah, the clubs pay for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
They're paid for by the clubs.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So that's not a ridiculous idea at all.
No, but that's not pay a fiver each.
No, I'm saying they should pay for the protest. This show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show. Tell us what they really think about the topics we're discussing. I've got 4 of you, so I need to be swift. Right, Lee Webb in Bedfordshire, what do you think? Is it time to put an end to these protests?
I totally disagree with why they're protesting, but I think you've got to have that right to protest. I think that's very important basis. I've protested before. I was protesting 4 years ago against lockdowns. So what protest would you like to keep? What protests do you want to ban? So that's why I think we've got to protect the right to protest.
Well, doesn't it depend if it's every single week and you're costing the taxpayer a lot of money? I mean, for goodness sake, there's got to be a line. You can't just protest forever. Brian Dugan.
Well, I mean, as someone has said, the war is still going on. It's your chief correspondent, I believe, who's just pointed that out. That's why people are protesting, Nana. So it's not like that this is just in a vacuum and they're just protesting for the sake of. The war is still going on. That's what they're protesting against.
Yeah, we get it.
And we can't get into a point of pick and choose, whereby some marchers are allowed to protest and some aren't. I mean, we do have the right to protest, and they're exercising that right, and I don't see anything wrong with it.
Unless of course you're Jewish and you happen to want to, you happen to live in that area.
There are Jews taking part in the march, and Danny's comment about useful Jews was out of order.
Do you think so? Maybe.
Yes, I do.
You think that's out of order? OK, Danny, you've been told off. Dan Bryan.
I disagree with him.
Dan Bryan in Hull.
Hello. I think the government would like nothing better than to be able to shut down protests in this country, any protest. It's what they're aiming for. They also want to digital ID everybody so they can track everybody's movements. They're using this kind of thing. They will use this kind of thing to bring this in because we'll all want it. But I agree with the sentiment that no protests should be shut down, really, even though I disagree with them completely. It's only when it starts to threaten violence, like if they're threatening jihad or something, then that's when the police should really step in and control it. But I like your idea of them having a separate area for them to go to do it.
That's a good idea. Separate area, and potentially the people who are organising it should pay for it. Somebody should pay for this, and it shouldn't be the taxpayer. Finally, to you, John Reid, briefly.
Yes, Nana, briefly, I'm with Nigel on this. I think you and Danny are bullying him a bit. We live in a democracy. The democracy allows people to have free speech, and that's what I've had all my life. So I'm 100% with allowing it to continue, with the one proviso that it's done legally. That's all.
OK. Well, thank you very much, Lee Webb, Brian Dugan, Dan Brown and John Reid. And yes, of course, apologies to anyone who was offended by Danny's comment regarding but I think, you know, I hear what he means by that. But coming up, mini debate, ex-Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi said that the Tory party were wrong to oust Boris Johnson. Don't go anywhere.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of today, we've still got some warm sunshine on offer. The risk of the odd shower, but feeling cooler in the east. We've got a ridge of higher pressure extending out towards the west. That's bringing in the settled conditions through much of today with light winds as indicated by the isobars. Otherwise, plenty of late evening sunshine on offer today. Any showers across southwestern parts of Scotland and Cumbria fading away into the evening. Otherwise, we've got a return of low cloud coming in from the North Sea and pushing its way further towards the west. Clearer skies further the west you go, but low cloud, mist and fog perhaps developing across Northern Ireland. Temperatures around 10 or 11, but feeling cooler underneath the clearest skies. So quite a murky start on Monday morning, especially further east that you go. So across Scotland, northeastern coasts as well, holding a lot of low cloud, mist and fog. But further the west, bright skies to start the day. Northern Ireland, like I said, some low cloud, mist and fog should lift and break. And then low cloud really lingering across parts of the southeast. Brighter skies further the west you go and dry too. So through the rest of Monday morning, low cloud, mist and fog should start lifting, breaking and burning its way back to coastlines. Might be a little bit slower than what we've seen on today, but otherwise plenty of sunny spells on offer. The risk of some heavy showers, especially across western parts of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, feeling perhaps a little bit cooler than what we saw on the weekend, but otherwise still feeling warm in the sunshine. As we go through the rest of Monday evening, any cloud generally breaking away, still with the risk of some heavy showers across western parts of Northern Ireland, perhaps developing across the south too. Otherwise, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, turning unsettled, showers or perhaps some longer spells of rain.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. It's time now for Supplement Sunday, where I asked my panel some of the other stories that caught their eye. But before I do that, Nadhim Zahawi said that it was a mistake to get rid of Boris. Was he right?
I think he was wrong. Boris is history now. There's no question about him coming back. And he made so many mistakes towards the end of his premiership, he had to go.
Danny Kelly.
A massive mistake. Of course it was. Yeah, I mean, I said that at the start, like Turkey's voting for Christmas. You know, all of the Conservative MPs ganging up on him because they were corralled into a corner, backed into a corner, saying, how can you morally support this guy? Oh, I see what you mean, I can't. Get him out.
I know, it was silly. All right, Danny, your supplement.
Supplement Sunday. Then, wish you were here, the Taliban, no less. I may have to just nip off to the high street in Birmingham and get a burqa for Mrs. Kelly. Wish you were here, the Taliban have launched Afghanistan as a holiday destination. Do you fancy a trip to Kabul?
I think
we'll take the wives.
I've been to Kabul and I don't think I want to go back there again.
No? Do you fancy a getaway?
No, thank you.
In Kabul, we can go along. Anyway, the Taliban have launched it with men getting trained up in hospitality, not women, of course. They're not going to allow the women to get involved with it. Anyway, it's a fun little story. Go to Kabul for a fortnight.
Nigel Nelson.
It's the full English are making a comeback. So this is from the English Breakfast Society, and what they're saying is that the traditional full English breakfast is now very popular abroad. Their website now gets a third of hits from other countries.
Good fry up.
What we need now is for America to get decent British bacon.
And my one here was this interesting story about barrister wigs, and apparently they're culturally insensitive. They're going to get rid of that. I think there's some... Because, you know, people with afro hair, you know, would struggle to get the wig on, and it's all a bit...
It's a white wig, isn't it? What's it made of?
It's a white wig as well.
Horsehair.
I was going to say...
Right?
Yes,
horsehair.
Yeah.
Old nag hair.
It's an old tradition, and I rather like some of our traditions in court.
I think you should keep them anyway. Well, let's see what you thought of that. Get in touch. But on today's show, I've been asking, would you trust Labour with the NHS? And according to our Twitter poll, 13% of you say yes, 87% of you say no. And also, I asked you, is it time to shut down pro-Palestine protests? 91% of you, you're with me, say yes. 9% of you say no. Exactly, my sentiments. Right, well, listen, thank you so much to my guest, senior GB News political commentator Nigel Nelson. Nigel, thank you very much. And also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny Kelly, thank you so much as well.
Thank you very much.
And a huge thank you to you at home for your company, for joining me. Next up, it's Neil Oliver. I'll see you next week, same time, same place. Don't forget, you can download the GB News app, or why not stream the show live on YouTube. I'll leave you with the weather. Have a fabulous week. Take care.
Glory.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. For the rest of today, we've still got some warm sunshine on offer. The risk of the odd shower, but feeling cooler in the east. We've got a ridge of higher pressure extending out towards the west. That's bringing in the settled conditions through much of today, with light winds as indicated by the isobars. Otherwise, plenty of late evening sunshine on offer today. Any showers across southwestern parts of Scotland and Cumbria fading away into the evening. Otherwise, we've got a return of low cloud coming in from the North Sea and pushing its way further towards the west. Clearer skies further the west you go, but low cloud, mist and fog perhaps developing across Northern Ireland. Temperatures around 10 or 11, but feeling cooler underneath the clearest skies. So quite a murky start on Monday morning, especially further east that you go. So across Scotland, northeastern coasts as well, holding a lot of low cloud, mist and fog. But further the west, bright skies to start the day. Northern Ireland, like I said, some low cloud, mist and fog should lift and break. And then low cloud really lingering across parts of the southeast. Brighter skies further the west you go, and dry too. So through the rest of Monday morning, low cloud, mist and fog should start lifting, breaking and burning its way back to coastlines. Might be a little bit slower than what we've seen on today, but otherwise plenty of sunny spells on offer. The risk of some heavy showers, especially across western parts of Northern Ireland. Elsewhere, feeling perhaps a little bit cooler than what we saw on the weekend, but